The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season.
But I'm still here, and I'm in studio. Justin Kinner with you here off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister in the producer chair. Casey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing all right. We had a little bit of a slow start just because of the internet and the connection, but we're good now. So we're ready to rock, ready to roll.
Is the mood better in here today? Are the vibes better? Let's go to our vibes guy, Mr. Vibes himself, Mr. Elliot Rearing.
No, but I think that with a smile and a can-do attitude, anything's possible. So maybe we can work to an okay vibe by the end of this show. Maybe. Probably not.
We can try.
We can try.
We can try.
What about you?
Let's just agree
now,
to
you're
not
on better sleep today, right?
Not really. I'm still very tired, but it's okay. We'll claw back. I'm digging out of a pretty deep hole here. But as long as we all agree to try to not trade any like the 3 players that are worth a damn on the Bengals, we'll all be good today.
Yeah, okay.
Well, here's how trading Joe Burrow can really just think about it. Trading Joe Burrow. No, we don't need to. We need to try and be friends today. That's the goal of today's show.
Let's trade Joe Burrow.
The chat is off to a hot start. They're saying you bought that hoodie yesterday.
No, I've worn this on the show before.
Okay.
I bought this, when they got Donovan Mitchell.
That's right.
So it's the second worst thing you could do as a Cavs. I checked out on the Cavs when LeBron went to the Lakers, I should say. But I've said in the NBA, I'm a player fan more than a team fan.
100%.
I was a Cavs fan growing up, but that lined up perfectly with LeBron going there. I mean, I wasn't a Ricky Davis, and I wasn't a Ricky
Carlos
Davis
Boozer guy.
I mean, I liked Carlos Boozer, but no one's buying a Carlos Boozer jersey.
Fair.
Although some will say Kinner with the Boozer jersey on the back, it probably wouldn't surprise him as far as that goes. But nonetheless, all right, we got a lot to get into today. We'll touch base on some college football updates that we didn't get to yesterday, understandably so. Jay Morrison will join us later on in the program as well. Jay Morrison, now with Sports Illustrated. He'll join us to talk about, of course, your Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm going to convince him that trading Joe Burrow is the best thing for this team. I mean, you need a quarterback that's going to win you games, guys. Seriously.
Sure.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes wins games.
That's
Josh
right.
Allen wins games. I mean, this bum Joe Burrow, he just can't win games.
I think I see the vision. It's Deion Sanders
And Shador.
and Shador time.
Oh, and then I can
That's
just do
what it-
this all day.
Because, we didn't sign him at UC. Now he's going to come and
He has always wanted to coach in Cincinnati.
Exactly.
This is what it's been about.
This is what
This
it's
is
all
what he
been
wanted to
about.
play for the Bengals. We said no. It was all about coaching.
That's why Mike Brown had that smile on his face in the suite the other day. He goes, these
knew
idiots
Deion
are
was
all
coming
upset. It's about to be prime time in all Cincinnati. But nonetheless, we'll get into all that and more coming up here just around the corner. But let's kick off the show with, and by the way, new sounder. I know I've said this before, but I got the confirmation. We got a new sounder on its way. We might kick it off for the month of December.
Really?
So we might just have to tough out November with
Whoa.
David Bell and Joey Votto. But we'll send it over to Elliot for Elliot's headlines.
Elliot loves 3 things: Joey Votto, David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
Yes. There were games yesterday. There was a lot of sports yesterday. We'll start with some college basketball. Gonzaga, the number 3 team in the nation. They win 80-67 over San Diego State. The 4th ranked team in the country. Auburn, 102-69 over North Alabama. Iowa State, number 5. They beat IU Indianapolis, 87-52. Wisconsin, they beat UT Rio Grande Valley, 87-84. Yikes. Arkansas, 20th ranked team in the country, they beat Pacific 91-72. But obviously there's some interesting games tonight regarding the University of Cincinnati. They play NKU. So good luck to the Bearcats. NBA scoreboard. The Bulls, they beat the Pistons yesterday, 122-112. You have the 76ers blowing a 20-point lead to the Miami Heat. They have 2 wins on this great season. 2 wins. How did Joel Embiid do? Nothing. 11 points. Good luck to him.
How many minutes?
How many minutes did he play? He played...
Because that's just impressive that he played minutes. I mean, at the end
playing
of
it
the
all.
day.
31 minutes. That's a good minute showing.
Wow, getting out
Not
there.
bad.
Giving his all for Philadelphia.
He played. Raptors, 130-119 over the Pacers. The Knicks take care of the Wizards. People forget about the Washington Wizards. What a hopeless organization that is.
I would say they're one of the more forgettable professional sports organizations.
I think 100%. Now, I feel like a lot of them are in the NBA, if we're going to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Kings are up there. But the Wizards, have they made the playoffs in the last 5 years?
John Wall and Bradley Beal had to have snuck in at least once.
I mean, with the new playoff thing, I don't know how it goes. Bucks, they win barely over the Rockets 101-100. The Magic take care of the Suns 101-99. The Clippers beat the Warriors 102-99. By the way, I saw every time I hear about the Clippers, I have to check what's their thing called? The Wall.
The Wall.
The Wall added some new rules yesterday. Apparently,
Ooh.
You can't cheer for the opposing team. If you don't know what the Wall is, their owner Steve Ballmer, thank you. Steve Ballmer created basically a cheering section for the NBA. I actually think that's pretty cool for what it's worth. I think that's pretty cool. So it's a cheering section that you have to like get special tickets to. I think it's like 5,000 maybe for the season if you want to be a part of the Wall. And at least that's the lower end part of it. There's new rules. You can't.
And Mexico's going to pay for it.
That's right. Thank you, Kenner. You cheer for your team. You cannot cheer for the opposing team at all. You cannot sell your tickets when you belong in the Wall. Only it has to be on like Clippers Marketplace or something specific like that. But yeah, it's good for I think that's fun. Good for them. The Hawks, they barely beat the Kings 109-108.
Real quick on that, Elliot, too. Like, I know we've discussed the Wall in the past. I do love it. I love the concept of it. The Clippers trying to find a way to like differentiate themselves from the Lakers, of course. But yeah, only Clippers fans allowed on the Wall. The first 13 rows for the most dedicated fans who must be vetted by the team.
Wow.
I didn't know this. The first 13 rows have to be vetted by the team. I don't know what that vetting process is. You cannot cheer for the opposing team if you are caught cheering for the opposing team, you will be escorted out of that section.
Love that.
Fans cannot wear gear that supports the opposing team. Tickets they cannot be listed on resale websites. You can only get it through Clippers Marketplace, as you mentioned. So it's an interesting, unique thing. But you better hope you have a good team because that's a lot of rules. If you're a bad NBA team, if you are non-interesting, there's a lot of rules to try to force. When you're trying to get people to go to your arena, there's a lot of rules whenever you're bad. So we'll see. I don't even know if the Clippers are good this year. The Clippers good this year?
I know Kawhi's not playing, so they can't be great. Let's take a look. NBA standings. Wow, I didn't even know there were divisions in the NBA.
That's
crazy. That's crazy. The Clippers are 9th in the Western Conference, 8-7.
All right, they're in the playoffs.
Ooh, they 4 seed. So,
the playoffs.
Almost.
So the Cavs do play the Celtics tonight. Mouse wanted me to add it. The Celtics are -5 at home. I believe is this the NBA in-season tournament? I think it might be. It says group stage, so I don't know if that means it's NBA in-season tournament.
The fun thing about those games is you don't know until you turn on the TV and the court's neon green.
I thought they only played those on Friday. Wasn't that last year's thing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Celtics 15-0 though. 15-0. So it's pretty good. Other news, MLB news. We have Rookie of the Year award winners. Luis Gil of the Yankees. Was that always going to happen? I feel like that was kind of a shock, no?
He was the favorite for most of the year,
okay,
but at the end he was not. It was Colton Cowser, I believe.
That's what I thought.
But he was, if you go by length of being the favorite, it was Luis Gil. But at the end of the season, it was Cowser. So I guess they might have given him the body of work nod there.
Luis Gil wins it for the AL. Yankees, Paul Skeens and the Pirates, they win it for the NL side, Rookie of the Year. He looked very excited when they told him he'd won it. So good luck to him and Livy Dunn. Cowboys box score last night. Yikes. The Cowboys, Cooper Rush, 32 for 55, 354 yards. Rico Dowdle, 10 carries, 28. CeeDee Lamb had 8 catches for 93. On the other side, C.J. Stroud, another mediocre game, I'd say. I wouldn't say that was a very solid
They got Nico back, too, so I was forgiving for a little bit, but I know no Stephon Diggs, but you put up big numbers without Stephon last year. Nico being out, little patient. But he had Nico back last night. Couldn't throw a touchdown.
Seems to be like the Joe Mixon show. It's just like that offense runs. If Joe Mixon's not healthy, I don't know what that team really is. Joe Mixon, 20 for 109, 3 touchdowns. Also added 2 catches for 44 yards. Dalton Schultz, 5 for 33. He led the team in receptions, 4 for 54 for both Nico Collins and Tank Dell. The Cowboys, if you saw that game at all, paneling. I think sheet metal fell from the ceiling and almost killed people right before the game. Luckily, it did not. And Jerry Jones, after the game, says he denies the notion that Mike McCarthy has lost the Cowboys. 34-10, the final score there in that disaster.
The sheet metal falling down from Jerry's world is just quite interesting during a time that he just said, hey, let's just tear the whole dang thing down because someone requested curtains.
Maybe you should.
Curtains, which a week later were put up for the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul
as
fight.
They are for
yesterday.
every non-NFL event held there.
But maybe that's Jerry Jones' way of saying, see, that paneling got loose and when you guys were going up there to hang up curtains, that paneling became loose. It's dangerous. No more curtains. There you go.
In their last 6 home games, the Cowboys have led for 2 minutes and 15 seconds. That all came in Week 6 against the Lions.
Oh, boy.
They have trailed by 20-plus points for 110 minutes.
Yikes. That's tough.
A lot of Cowboys nuggets you got there.
That's
Nuggets.
crazy.
Did you watch that game last night at all?
Watch the first half.
If you watched the game, Cooper Rush threw about 7 more interceptions. I think he would have set the record last night for interceptions thrown had the Texans been competent enough to catch a few of them. There was one, again, I just don't know defensive players. There was a guy on the Texans last night. He had the ball. He cut in front of
Caden Bullock, the safety. He has 5 picks on the year too. He's an interceptions guy.
He cut in front of Shoemaker, one of the backup tight ends, because Ferguson got hurt last night. He cut right in front of him. Had the ball like it was the most easy catch I've ever seen, and the guy dropped it to the floor. So yikes! But good luck to the Dallas Cowboys. They play the Bengals soon.
When do you run Trey Lance? It can't be that much worse than Cooper Rush. It's more fun.
Trey Lance has to play. There's no reason for Trey Lance not to play. You're in full tank mode if you're the Cowboys.
Even if it's worse, that's better for you.
It's better for you, yeah.
And if it's better, maybe you have some fun.
With Dak Prescott getting hurt makes this very easy for the Cowboys, and that's lose everything.
I did see someone compare this to the early 2010s, mid-2010s when Tony Romo got hurt and the Cowboys ended up picking pretty high in the draft.
Yeah.
The Cowboys always, about once a decade, seem to have a pretty good quarterback that everyone hates, and then you get one season where he gets hurt, and the backup comes in, and they really stink, and then everyone starts to respect that quarterback a little bit more.
Yeah.
So when Dak comes back next year and leads the Cowboys to a 12-5 record and loses in the first round like always, maybe we'll respect that he's able to do that with, not as great of a roster as maybe it seems when he gets hurt and we see how bad they are.
Yeah. And by the way, when Romo got hurt, that led to the addition of, technically Dak.
Yeah.
But that high draft pick that they got, I think it was number 4 or 5, they ended up taking Zeke. Everyone said you don't take a running back that high in the draft, but the Cowboys were in a position where they were actually a good team. They were only picking that high because Tony Romo went out. So they were able to take advantage of getting a luxury pick like that and taking it on Zeke. Could they do that again this year with Jensen? If they don't have that number 1 overall pick, if they're not in a position to get Shedeur Sanders and apparently Dion, is there a package deal? Sorry, Cincinnati. Better luck next year. But maybe they go the running back route again. Maybe history repeats itself. So
also, real quick, now see David Shaw's putting up like comments in the chat. The sheet metal didn't almost kill anybody. Casey, I sent you the clip. Didn't almost kill anybody. Buddy, a guy
jumps out of the way.
A guy had to jump out of the way. What are you talking about?
And if sheet metal's falling from the roof of the dome at all with people inside of it.
I got it right here.
I mean, you take a look at this and tell me if this guy didn't get the back leg of his pants touched. You know that the guy who had to outwardly move?
He jumped.
He didn't get almost hit there? Okay. I guess
they're actively moving the players off the sideline because they're in the area.
Hey, but I guess I didn't see that.
There's Jerry right there, just like,
Jerry.
That damn Mike McCarthy. I don't know. Look, bam, right there.
Didn't almost kill anybody. I mean, if that didn't almost kill anybody, I don't know. I mean, my God. What? It almost drilled that guy. But okay.
Amputee. He would have been an amputee if it would have just been a little more to the right.
I have to prove that I'm right. That's my biggest knock on my character as a human being. If somebody questions that I'm wrong, I have to be right.
I'm proud that you proved that in real time.
Yeah.
Just like seamlessly sending that tweet to Casey.
Well, it was I saw.
Good.
I mean, what did he say here? I think he said didn't almost kill anyone. Many reports reported that no one was in harm's way. What about the report of the video that just almost hit him? I mean, that was the most obvious video I've ever seen. Guy had to run away. All right, that's it. Headlines.
And there you go. Those are Elliot's headlines right there. I can't wait for the new sounder.
I'm excited.
I told him to
too.
surprise me with it. I said, surprise me with it.
Okay.
I told him a little bit about you. I said, use what I've sent you about Elliot and create something. We'll see what the guy comes
I'll bet it.
So then walk up the stage to booze. I don't know. Elliot, any comment?
No comment.
No comment.
I have no comment.
All right, fair enough.
Those halftime shows for the Thanksgiving Day games and stuff, that's weird. It's a regular season game. I don't think we need all the theatrics.
Yeah, I'm good, especially if it's going to be as laggy as this stream is right now. So I'm good. Netflix can keep their halftime shows.
Didn't Machine Gun Kelly just do one too?
Yeah, that was
the Germany game.
Yeah, and it was awkward. I think a lot of those are awkward. I'm not a big fan of those. right? Unless Creed crushed it back in the day.
Just get better performers, and I'd be all in. That'd be fun.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube and 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. We'll be right back.
On Twitter.
Go watch on Twitter.
Twitter, it's running fine.
There you go.
Facebook, it's fine.
It's a YouTube issue, not a internet issue.
YouTube. Classic YouTube. It's all because we started running the ads.
I think it was all the Elliot's political talk.
That's right.
YouTube's trying to
They're pushing us down the algorithm.
Yeah, they're trying to silence us. They're trying to silence Elliot's political takes over
Clearly.
here, nonetheless. But all right, let's talk a little NFL. Jay Morrison, Sports Illustrated, he'll join us coming up here later on in the program. We'll talk all things Bengals, covering your Cincinnati Bengals, of course. Excited to chat with him. But yesterday, everyone was a little passionate, a little upset, regarding basically the way the Cincinnati Bengals season has gone. And there's quite a few teams that have frustrated fan bases. There are teams who they didn't expect to be good this year. And, not that they're happy with losing, but it was kind of the expectation. Then there are some franchises who had a lot of expectations for their teams this season, who spent a lot of money on their rosters, who expected to have a much different outcome than where we are heading, a week and some change out from Thanksgiving. You look at teams like the Dallas Cowboys, who, of course, I want to say a lot of their issues are because of injuries. We saw last night how bad that they are, but this was a team that even before the injuries to Dak, they were still losing football games and not looking the part. You look at the Jets, a lot of money spent on that roster. You go get Aaron Rodgers. You go get Devontae Adams. You finally get the deal done with Reddick to get him out there. They tried everything that they could to make that work, and it's just continuing to plummet. It's continuing to crumble, and it's just not working. Obviously, the Jaguars, you have Trevor Lawrence, all right? That's supposed to be a franchise quarterback. You have Doug Peterson, who's led a team to a Super Bowl in the past, who's won a Super Bowl. It's just not working. The Jaguars, how they haven't fired him yet is just beyond me. I highly doubt he makes it through the end of the season. And then, of course, obviously, you have the Cincinnati Bengals, you have the Cleveland Browns. I'm throwing those teams out to you guys. You have the Cowboys, the Jets, the Jaguars, and then the two Ohio teams, Bengals, Browns. All teams that have deficiencies that you could point at and say, well, they need to fix this in the offseason, but all of these teams have deficiencies that aren't easily fixed. Because there's not just one issue. There's multiple issues. There's also spending restrictions. There's also, philosophies from front offices that get in the way, stubborn ownership. Every one of these teams, they're all bad for a different reason. The Browns have the contract. They have the quarterback mess with Deshaun Watson. The Bengals have an owner in Mike Brown that, despite all the changes that we felt the organization had made over the years structurally, you still see a lot of those issues get in the way with this team progressively moving forward. The Jets, they've put a lot of money into Aaron Rodgers. They've put a lot of money into an old roster. A lot of those guys are 30-plus years old. They went all in for a short Super Bowl window. How do you get out of that? I talked about the Jaguars. That one might be one of the easier ones to get out of, although you just gave a ton of money to your quarterback. You move money elsewhere to try to patch some of those holes, get a new head coach. And then the Cowboys, $60 million a year to their quarterback in Dak Prescott, an owner that won't spend money, which is wild because he's known for having the most money in the NFL, and Jerry Jones. I don't know, all five of those situations. You have bad teams like the Titans. The Titans are bad. There's some bad teams, but I don't think anyone's looking at the Titans and saying, my God, they're in a horrible situation. They got a new young head coach that everyone feels good about. They're about to get a new quarterback. They're going to fix some things. But these five teams, the Cowboys, Jets, Bengals, Jags, and Browns, which one of these teams is in the worst situation, the situation that's going to be the most tough to dig out of moving forward?
The only reason I would say it's the Jaguars and not the Cowboys is because I like Dak marginally more than I like Trevor. And when you have the quarterback contract locked in, you're already working with one arm tied behind your back. So if I don't believe in your $55 million quarterback, I think you are in the worst possible situation any NFL team could be in. And I don't believe in Trevor Lawrence, so I think the Jags are the worst situation maybe in the entire NFL. You're going to start with a new coach next year. You're probably going to have to get a new GM as well, because before the season, the Jaguars owner sat down with the media and said that this is the best roster that they've ever constructed in Jacksonville. The Jaguars are 2-9.
Yeah.
If this is what's happening with the best roster you've ever constructed in Jacksonville, at least with the owner's opinion, the GM and the coach are definitely gone. Have to be. Otherwise, you can't justify this result with that quote. So I would assume there's major changes there. And what's the thing that we always say when you make a change at coach and GM? You should probably bring in a new quarterback as well. Coaches and GMs like to have their quarterback locked in. Obviously can't do that in Jacksonville with Trevor. You got to hope that that coach you bring in, the GM you bring in, really do like Trevor and are willing to build around him. I don't know how many pieces there are in Jacksonville as a whole that I like. Josh Allen's a great edge rusher. Other than that, Travis Etienne's fallen off. Tank Bigsby's taken a lot of those running back 1 reps. The wide receivers haven't been great. Brian Thomas looks like a good young piece, but outside of that, in that room, there's not a whole lot that I love. Brandon Sheriff's their best player. He's 33. I don't think they have a whole lot going for them in the future. They're probably going to be picking early, in which case I would love Travis Hunter. That's a good young piece that you'd have there. But outside of that, I don't think they have a whole lot going for them. I'd say Jacksonville's the worst.
I think Jacksonville's the worst because you don't know their identity. Like they play in London 3 times a year. Could you imagine being a fan of a team like that? The Jaguars are in like, I used the word purgatory yesterday. I'm going to use it again. They're in purgatory because you don't know where the hell they are. You don't know. I mean, the ownership group there, I'd imagine moving that team overseas is a real possibility. If there was a team that gets moved somewhere, it will be the Jaguars. It's hard to be a fan there. I'd imagine it's not great to be a player there, other than it's in Florida. And I guess if you like Florida weather, I mean, Jacksonville I wouldn't say is the shining star of Florida. But I just think that situation, I don't know if there's a way that you can like be happy in that there. Trevor Lawrence, I knew he was shout out to me, and I say this with love and respect. Trevor Lawrence is a bad quarterback. Like he's a bottom 15 quarterback, and that's my metric for bad. So I'm going to say he's a bottom 15 quarterback in the league, bottom 16.
They polled coaches, GMs, and players, and he was the one that they said would quit football.
Yeah, that's just a situation that you can't come out of. The Cowboys can absolutely come out of that situation. If Dak Prescott even shows up a little bit, he led the league in touchdowns last year. Dak Prescott's good enough to win football games. The defense that the Cowboys have this year is bottom 3 in the league. So it was a disaster from the jump. And I believe, just despite whatever you want to say about Jerry Jones at least cares enough to at least try to put a winning team out in the field. I don't know if that's the case for the Jaguars. I think they're just in it just to be a part of it.
So the Jaguars interest me because they're one of those, they make bad decisions, but they make aggressive decisions. And I'm fine with aggressive decisions.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer was an aggressive decision. Did it work out? No. But they have a rich owner. They have a cash-rich owner. And I'm big on the cash-rich owners. I like that because I think when you have a cash-rich owner, you could dig yourself out of holes quicker. That's why I think Cleveland's in a horrible spot, but I don't think it's an impossible spot. I mean, they've found ways to buy themselves out of situations. Obviously, this year it's caught up with them. Like last year, being able to, even with all that money into Deshaun Watson, still having the money dispersed throughout the entire roster, I think they can dig themselves out of that. They owe Deshaun every dollar that is going to him. But again, they have other contracts so they can roll over and still go get players. They could still compete in the short term, and they're about to get a premium draft pick at this point with the way this season is trending. If we're talking about just digging themselves out of a hole to become competitive again, I like the Browns getting out of that in the near future.
The other thing about the Browns is I think they're going to be picking high enough that they're going to get a new quarterback.
Yes.
The Jaguars are locked in with a guy that I don't think is very good.
And Deshaun's horrible, but you have 2 more years of that. You draft a rookie quarterback. You have to, and that's what I said. Like people say, well, you have to pay Deshaun everything. Exactly. Whether Deshaun's good or bad, you have to pay him everything. So you have to navigate around that. You're not going to play Deshaun moving forward. You draft that rookie quarterback. You either bring Winston back and you kind of bridge it with the new rookie and go from there. But that's besides the point. And the other reason I think Cleveland is not that far off as far as that. If they do decide to blow it all up, Myles Garrett's going to get him a ton of premium draft picks back, as will Ward, although that worries me just because of the concussion issues. And I think Cleveland drafts real well. I know we had this argument a while back, but like when you look at a lot of the weapons that they've paid, you talked yesterday, at some point the Bengals have to pay guys that they've drafted and developed, right? The Browns have done that. When you look at Myles Garrett, all right, when you look at Delpit, when you look at Newsome, when you look at Ward, when you look at Njoku, when you look at Nick Chubb, when you look at that offensive line, they pay their guys. Like when they draft their guys and develop them, they pay them. And it's not just that they pay them, but they draft them and develop them to the point to where they do just fill holes in free agency. I'm not as worried about Cleveland. I'm not saying they're good. They're a dumpster fire. I get that. The Jags, I think, they have an okay chance to buy themselves out of this situation. The Jets, I think, are the worst. I think the Jets are in the worst spot of all. They're another one that's aggressive, but they just they've made so many bad decisions. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a bad decision. I think that you have to pay him at that spot. You don't move on from Trevor Lawrence, even though their backs were against the wall. You had to pay him. I just think it's going to work out against him. The Jets are a problem. The Cowboys, I was watching the show yesterday. They said, hey, Dak Prescott, there'd be a market for him, a small market. But you look at a team like the Tennessee Titans. You mean to tell me that they wouldn't move on from some quality pieces to go get a Dak Prescott to start competing and winning now? You can look at the Raiders. The Raiders are tired of just being an average team. You think that the Raiders wouldn't give up premium draft picks to go get a Dak Prescott, who also has they have a cash-rich owner, they'd be able to pay it? Your Bengals worry me. Not hating. Your Bengals worry me because of all the reasons that you love this team, the quarterback that leads the league in throwing and yards and touchdowns, and the receiver and the sacks leader, and you're still 4-7. The team struggles with drafting. We discussed that yesterday. What's the point of going to get more draft picks if you can't even draft with what draft picks you have now at this point? The owner that continuously gets in the way. I think the Bengals will be competitive. They'll continuously be competitive. I just don't think for what you guys are wanting out of the Joe Burrow era, I don't know if you get to that point with the status quo being what it is.
With him being injured and being out for the season on IR with surgery, it would be incredibly hard to get any kind of value for the most expensive quarterback contract coming off an injury where he tore his hamstring off his bone. I mean, you're not getting Dak value for that trade without seeing him play again, which means in order to get maximum value on moving him, you'd have to play him next year, which means you'd be having Deion Sanders coach a team where he's sitting his son. I just don't see that happening there. And with the way Colorado's going right now, Julian Lewis, the number 2 quarterback in next year's class, just decommitted from USC, took a visit to Colorado a few weeks ago. I don't think Deion's going anywhere. I think he's holding it down in Colorado. I think Julian Lewis is going to commit there, and he'll have a quarterback that's even better than Shedeur.
Especially because they're winning now. I guess to go to that, I know we're going to get to college later, but if Colorado has just been, if they've been awful,
yeah,
I could see Deion say, forget it, I'm out. I tried it, not working.
They're going to make the playoff.
Yeah, they're probably going to win that damn division when it's all said, or that conference when it's all said and done. Who knows? All 5 of those teams, though, they have some work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Bengals feel like the most comfortable because you have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, no doubt about it. The others, not so much, and that's the thing too. When you have an elite quarterback, all your problems don't seem as bad because you have the most important puzzle piece when it's all said and done. No matter how cash-rich your owner is, if you don't have the quarterback right, you're just running in place. You have a Myles Garrett and a Denzel Ward, and you have great defensive pieces, and you still can't do anything with it because you can't get the quarterback right. You have to get the quarterback right. The Bengals at least have that. The other teams don't.
At least the Bears, the Cowboys, and the Bengals, the Cowboys, and the Browns out of that group have multiple elite players.
Yep.
None of those other teams have one elite player. I mean, Bengals have Joe and Jamar and Trey and the defensive pieces in Cleveland, and obviously CD and Dak, and if they're able to retain Micah, that's enough to build around and be a competitive team. It just is.
Yeah.
And when Aaron Rodgers is playing at this level and he's focused on bringing all of his buddies over to New York, I don't think that they're trending up anytime soon. I think they're closer to the bottom than we even give them credit for because we do believe in a lot of those young pieces on defense. But if this is the way their offense is going to trend, Aaron Rodgers seems to be wanting to come back next year. That's going to get even uglier as he gets older because what's the reason that he's struggling this year? He's immobile. And as you age, what are you going to be? More and more immobile. I think the Jets are trending in the wrong direction for sure, which is a shame because they have a lot of young pieces I adore.
The Jets, you know how many years it's been since they made the playoffs? Do you know what year it was when they made the playoffs last? Anybody guess? Any guess?
Is it more than 10 years?
2010 was the last time the New York Jets made the postseason.
That was the Rex Ryan year.
It's been 13 seasons. They're going to miss it this year. That drought extends to 14. Do you know who's in second? This is a tough one. Who is in second with this drought?
The longest playoff drought?
I'll give you a hint. It's 8 seasons for this team. Their last game was 2016. Their last playoff game was in 2016.
I would have to assume, was it Cam Newton and the Panthers?
Almost. Their drought is at 6.
Saints?
It's another team that went to a Super Bowl.
I know who it is.
Jump in.
Say it.
It's Falcons.
It is not. That's 6 as well. The Denver Broncos have not made the playoffs in 8 seasons. Their last game was Super Bowl 50 against the Panthers.
Omaha. There you go. Interesting. I would not have guessed that.
I would not have guessed it either.
When the hell did the Panthers make it?
Panthers, 2017 NFC wild card against the Saints.
Who was their quarterback? You don't have to have all that with you. I
don't
can't
have
even
that
think
one.
the last time that they were relevant. I thought it was the Cam Newton era, but there you go. All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We'll get to more Dion stuff in a bit when we get to the college football portion. Ohio State, Indiana coming up this weekend. I heard dialed in yesterday. Tom was surprised about the line. He thought at one point it was 9.5 last week. Then it was 11.5. And if I'm not mistaken, today it's 13.5.
I saw 12.5 this morning.
So 12.5. So 13.5 is on ESPN Bet. At least that's what I saw early this morning. I don't know what's happening with that line, why it's shifting so much, but maybe
It's shifting so much because it's way too low.
It should be higher.
Oh, yeah.
Give the little guy a chance. Come on, dude. I'm all about the little guy, you know.
Yeah,
you know. But, all right, more off the bench when we come back. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, and Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Have you guys had a so Northwestern? I mean, Northwestern is just. I mean, obviously you have to be pretty intelligent to go there.
Sure.
I wasn't smart enough to go there. You know, whatever. It is what it is. Were any of you are? How
Did you
smart are we?
Did you try? Did you try?
No, I'm just saying. Why try? Why? I'm not even gonna.
I applied to 2 schools and went 2 for 2.
Ooh, Toledo. is
Toledo
one.
and UC.
There you go.
Went 2. I didn't like. I had no interest in going elsewhere. My ACT score was terrible, so I couldn't get the free ride to Alabama that they give out. And then it's a real thing. That's a bargain.
That's why I went there.
That's a bargain. When I think they changed it now. It might be like 32 or 34 now. I could be wrong on that. It was like 30 when I was in high school. If you got a 30, you got a full ride to Alabama. I did unfortunately not get that number.
I didn't get the full ride number, but I got in-state, which
Okay.
is why I swung it down there. SEC gives out crazy scholarships.
Yeah, I
Wait, where
bet.
are you from?
Where am I
Have you-
from?
Yeah, have you lived in Ohio your
Yeah,
whole life?
lived in Cincinnati my whole life.
Okay, but you said in-state. So how'd you get the in-state?
The scholarships for the ACT, if you reach a certain threshold, you're able to pay. A lot of the SEC schools, you pay in-state tuition.
Oh,
Like, that's one of their scholarships.
Fair enough.
They're begging people to attend classes.
And little do they know. Still don't know.
But yeah, those are the only 2 schools I applied to.
But like-
Casey,
I applied to UC and NKU and went to NKU.
2 for 2. He went 2 for 2. Got 2 for 2.
A little Horizon League action over here.
That's
Got
right.
Northern Kentucky, Wright State, you know. A lot of brains in this room, But, you know, you got Northwestern who, you know, you have to be pretty intelligent to go there, but you don't have to be pretty athletic to go there. You don't have to be really talented at all in sports to go there. They're not really known for any of their sports programs. When you think of in the Big Ten especially, if I was to tell you Ohio State's about to get a $850 million new stadium built, no one would be surprised. Right, UCLA, if they're going to get a $1 billion stadium put up, no one would be surprised. When you think of the Big House, Michigan, the bigger brands, if I was to tell you that they're going to get an $850 million stadium built, no one would be shocked. But then there's Northwestern, and they're getting an $850 million stadium that is going to be put up, and it's going to be very similar to, if you look at SoFi, so the mock-ups that we're going to share, there's going to be similarities to SoFi. There's going to be similarities to a lot of the brand new NFL stadiums that have been put up. Casey, for those of you who are tuning in and watching on the YouTube side, look at this for Northwestern. That is like first of all, I love the fact, I think whoever made this, I think they felt uncomfortable putting fans in the stands, but they had to do it. But look at this. Like, this is the little ballroom that they're going to be able to have the conference. I mean, that's the Titanic right there.
Crazy.
But this is what I mean by, like, that SoFi type of look. Like, this is Northwestern getting this. A Big Ten school, but they're not really known for anything. Like, who's going to go?
They're going to use this for things other than Northwestern football if they're building this in Chicago, right?
You would think. Now, this
You'd
was
have to.
Now, this is a grant, I believe, for Northwest. But yes, to be able to maximize the revenue-making
Right.
opportunities, it's not going to be get your season tickets now. And this is going to be a great test, by the way. Does a brand new, beautiful stadium draw fans in, or is it what's on the field that matters? That's really what I think Northwestern fans, if there are any, would love to have a chance to cheer on their Wildcats. Or is that what they are, the Wildcats?
They are the Wildcats.
Yeah, they would love to cheer on their Wildcats. But I think what they would prefer to have is that $850 million that was spent on that stadium, that's going to be spent on this stadium. Wouldn't you rather have a $850 million roster. I know that's a little high. If people get mad at Ohio State for $20 million, imagine what $850 million would get a reaction of. But I just, again, of all programs to do this, Northwestern, I know I'm being a little elitist with this take. It seems odd. It seems weird. Northwestern, again, it's going to be a palace. It's going to be a beautiful stadium, no doubt. But then what? Everyone's gonna tune in for the monumental first game there when they the ribbon cutting, all that fun stuff, and then after that, you're still Northwestern football. And let me ask you again: how many elite recruits are going to all of a sudden want to go to Northwestern now just because of this? Do you think that that's a major turn in recruiting when it's all said and done?
No, I don't think it'll have a massive effect on the recruiting or the level of play on the field. Maybe at some point. Facilities give you a little bit of a bigger leg up, at least in my opinion, in a coaching search than in a recruiting search. I think when you're trying to bring guys in and sell to them that they can build your program up to a higher level, having facilities like this, and they do play in the Big Ten. They are a Power 4 team in a major conference. If they ever fire their coach and they're looking in a coaching search, and you have these facilities and you can walk them through and say you have some of the nicest facilities in the whole country. You live in Chicago. You can do the recruiting by using this. Maybe that's a good selling point in that sense. So maybe it could help them down the line. I would not expect that Northwestern's a playoff contender anytime soon or anything like that, but absolutely a beautiful field and good for their fans. I'm sure they'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, Northwestern football, I'm just looking at their season-by-season records here. I mean, it's just...
Big Ten championship not too long ago.
Okay, that's fair. When was that? 2000 what?
In the last 5 years.
So that's back when they had the divisions when the rights... But... Jake's not wrong. That no one really capitalized. Like Wisconsin was on that side of the division, the East-West and all that stuff. But they've gotten there. Fitzgerald was the head coach.
2020 Big Ten championship.
Oh, asterisks.
Well, they won more games than they usually do in an 8-game season.
But no, they have been able to get to the Big Ten championship, but that's almost worked against Ohio State at times because when they needed a big-time win to improve their resume, other schools were playing. You had Georgia, Alabama in the SEC title game. You'd get Clemson, and that one you'd get Notre Dame in the ACC championship game, and then there's Ohio State playing Northwestern and relying on the win over the Wildcats to improve their resume is kind of wild. But nonetheless, no. So. No, continue.
I was just going to say that if you build a stadium like that for a college, there has to be another Jacob's right. I mean, there has to be it has to be like a multi-function type of situation. Put it downtown, have big concerts there, and have basically other uses for that venue than just college football, because obviously it makes no sense for that just to be a college football venue.
Northwestern football needs to be like the 8th or 9th highest priority on the list of that stadium.
Sure.
To make it make sense.
Yeah,
But I guess this is what you get when you have just stupid rich alumni. I mean, they churn them out. Doctors and journalists and all the stuff, people at the top of their game. So.
Did you say the capacity? Was there an announced? What did you say was the capacity was?
What's their capacity now, or what was the previous? What do you have pulled up? Because I do have the capacity for the new stadium, but I didn't know what I didn't want to step on your toes.
Well, I was just let me see. So, this can't be right.
They have a practice.
47,000, I believe.
So that's what they currently have. So this Northwestern, they unveiled their detailed plans for the new Ryan Field. Okay, closer sight lines. It'll have elements, and you saw. I mean, it's a really cool stadium. I'm not gonna lie. I already know. It's elements from an NFL, Major League Soccer type venue.
Hold on. Reminder. What's their current?
Their old one. So it's 47,000 was their old one.
$850 million renovation.
Yep. And Ohio State's is about 100,000. Big Ten or Michigan's about 110.
$850 million renovation on a 47,000 seat stadium.
Okay.
To fill 35,000 seats.
They went down 12,000 seats.
Oh no.
Yeah, so to ask earlier,
why would they do that?
You're not getting title games. You're not getting You're not getting
You're not getting a Final Four. Yeah. You're not getting
March Madness.
You're not getting headline stadium tours.
Then what's the point of any of it? I don't get that. Doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, it's set to open in 2026. It's the largest stadium project in college football history. $850 million, set to open in 2026, and that's what got me to Jake was the 35,000 seat venue.
I don't what's
ask your question.
Well, it was just who would pay for that? Why would you do that? Other than making your school look nice, I guess. I mean, don't get confused. Northwestern's never going to win a national championship. So why would you pay for this if there wasn't other uses for that stadium? But if you're going down incapacity, then you've done nothing.
So-
you just niced up a bad stadium.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So it's interesting because On 3, on their account, so Andy Staples, he covers college football for On 3, he asked the question, simply put, he goes, well, the stadium is a beautiful rendering of this new stadium. It's going to be exciting for Northwestern. Why spend nearly $1 billion? Because it's $850 million. That's the thing it is. It's almost $1 billion for a 35,000-seat venue. Why spend nearly $1 billion on the stadium when you could buy players? Like, I don't know who the donor is. Didn't really look up the background as far as why this. And again, there's probably restrictions on how the money's supposed to be used. It's probably specifically for this. I do think that at times when you get these rich, these rich donors, hey, when I die, my legacy is going to be that my name is on this stadium. I'm assuming it's something along those lines. You made a good point earlier.
The main donor of the $850 million to the new Ryan Field, is the Ryan family.
You mean Rex Ryan?
No, whoever the field's named
Yeah.
after. Their family's paying for this. So that's why it's not going to players.
I see.
It's because they want the field with
Unless
their
you
name
could
on it to
put
look
like
at.
your name on the players' jerseys or something, because you can't buy this. Individuals can't sponsor players, right? Like that's so.
Yeah. Craig
but-
says Pat Ryan is the lead donor. He's a minority owner of the Bears.
There you go. Well, and look, at the end of the day, there has to be people at Northwestern saying, man, we really appreciate this. Like, we're not going to say no to a new $850 million stadium.
No, of course not.
But can we just have like a lesser, not so nice new stadium and maybe use a couple, $100 million of that for players? That's the thing. Like, I do think like Indiana all of a sudden is turning into this power. I was reading something the other day that one reason that Cincinnati went there too was because there was a promise of X amount of, like there were certain donors with Indiana football that said, we're not giving you a dime unless you go get a real head coach, not some up-and-coming offensive coordinator. Cincinnati obviously killed the interview process. There was money that was donated specifically for if this individual got hired. Now look, NIL money, Indiana money goes up. Now look, Indiana's undefeated. Their first top 5 showdown in program history coming up this weekend. I'm not saying all of that's because of NIL, but it did allow Indiana to take a step forward. What's the point of having this almost $1 billion stadium if Northwestern football is just going to be the same old, same old? It doesn't make sense. I'd much rather see, if I'm a Northwestern fan, I'd much rather see that money go into the NIL pot than into a stadium.
The first thing Kurt Cignetti did when he got to Indiana is he had them gut their workout facility and build a new gym.
Yep.
So I guess those top facilities do matter for those coaches, though. So maybe they're just doing it in the other order. They get the facility and then they pitch the good coach. Because Indiana, I guess they're not too far from Northwestern, so maybe it's not fair to say. But I think with what they're currently working with, I don't think Northwestern's getting anyone at the top of that heap.
Probably not.
But maybe this will help.
So I think that, let me ask you, by the way, not to rehash an old argument that got you on the hot seat like me all the time. Northwestern or Cincinnati, better coaching job?
Let's see when this new stadium comes out.
The money-wise, obviously, Northwestern because they're in the Big Ten. But
no, UC's
from an
better
ability to
coaching
win.
UC's better coaching
Yeah.
than Northwestern.
So I say that because you're a Bearcat fan, Elliot. Like,
Sure, I am.
If this was the Bearcats, if some donor of the Bearcats came out and said, hey, we're going to build the Bearcats a new $850 million stadium, but you would, as a fan, I'm sure you'd be jacked, but wouldn't you rather, like, hey, I kind of want that money to go towards players? Like, that's really where I'm at with this whole Northwestern thing. Beautiful stadium, fantastic, super cool. You could literally go buy players now. Like, that's kind of my argument. How would you feel if this was a Bearcat storyline?
NIP is historic. It's one of the best college football venues in the country. So I don't think there would be any need to upgrade that.
He did it, not me. I didn't.
How many stadiums go in one of the best?
Nip at night.
50?
Nip at night.
I
You
love the
clearly never
nickname.
experienced Nip at night, and that's on you.
Have you ever been to the SEC?
I don't care about the SEC. I'm concerned about the University of Cincinnati for this question. No, I mean, I don't. They would never do it. First of all, and second of all, then I wouldn't really care. I think if you upgrade the stadium and it's $100,000, and that's being in Cincinnati, that stadium has other uses. Like, that wouldn't just be a Bearcat stadium. That would be for a lot of things. And if that's the case, then I'd 100% be okay with it. But you're right. I mean, if you have money, then use it for players. Build a football program. Their stadium was terrible, though, so they had to redo it anyway.
And the program's terrible.
And their program's terrible.
But there you go. All right, this is Off the
A
Bench.
lot of bowl games, though.
This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Let's talk a little college football. You like Lane Kiffin?
I think Lane Kiffin is James Franklin. Just in a different conference.
I think Lane Kiffin at least has charisma. I don't
Well,
know.
that's fair. That's fair. I need more wins and losses.
I like Lane Kiffin. I'm not saying if Ohio State had an opening that I'd be all for Lane Kiffin.
He's fun.
But he's a character, and I'm a big fan of his. But he kind of said something that has a lot of people talking regarding this upcoming college football playoff as, well, conference championships coming up just around the corner, and there's, well, a lot of SEC teams in the mix for, well, only technically one spot because Texas has that SEC title game pretty much in the palm of their hand right now, right?
No, winner of Texas versus Texas A&M.
So they have to. Okay, so they have a play-in game basically. It's a playoff game coming up. But let's talk about that. Ohio State getting set to take on Indiana this weekend. Another big one there. We'll talk about the Bearcats as well. More Dion. Plus, Indiana did a real program thing this past weekend. They pulled up to the adult table. They made a big decision this past weekend. We'll discuss that and more when we come back. This is Off the Bench. We'll get into our Cincinnati Bengals conversation with Jay Morrison coming up here on the YouTube side about 11:20. He's going to hop on with us. He's recording his podcast right now. He just texted me saying he'll jump on with us as soon as he's done with that. A lot to talk about with old Jay.
Yes.
If Jay's on right now, your first question is what? What's the first question you have for Jay?
When does it get better?
When does it stop?
Both, two different questions, same question.
Yeah, this season's killed me. So,
is this bye week
Is this the most disappointing season? And I guess I can't really ask you, Kinner. But is this the most disappointing season for you guys?
Don't let us beat the Steelers.
Assuming you lose to the Steelers like you will, is this the most disappointing Bengals season of all time?
Then for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. If this team keeps trending the way it's trending right now and they're unable to win 6 in a row and get into the playoffs, then no question about it, this is the most disappointing season of my lifetime.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
How could it not be? Any other time you end up this low, there's been an injury to blame.
It's funny how like the Reds season and this season kind of both did the same sort of thing. A lot of expectations, a lot of hype coming in, mostly healthy, and then boom, everything dies and everyone gets hurt.
Yeah, the Reds had. Well, I mean, I'm not going to act like I didn't think that the Reds were good enough to win the NL Central because when we had guys like Verlander and other guys on, and the national media was hyping up the Reds. I remember talking with Brad Meter, the general manager of the Reds, said, "Hey, based on the makeup of this roster right now, the expectation is what?" And he said, "We think we're good enough to go win that division." So that's where my mind went. The rest of the offseason and into last season, so there was expectations to be, and I think if you're good enough to win a division, you're maybe not a favorite to win the World Series, but should be good enough to be, considered, a contender. The Reds season was very disappointing, but they put you out of your misery early. We knew early on this team wasn't going to be good enough to win the division like we wanted them to, but we still thought maybe they can go on a run to be in that wild card hunt. The Bengals, I think this has to be probably one of the most, if not the most disappointing season in franchise history, only because, as you guys talked about, they were a Super Bowl contender coming into the year. Joe Burrow was healthy for the entire camp. T. Higgins, he put his trade request off to the side. Hendrickson put it off to the side. And I thought they're doing that because they feel they have a chance to win a Super Bowl this year. I don't think that they anticipated all this drama and mess this season. So to me, those were signals that all the players are sending signals to the fans that they're putting their drama to the side because the only thing that they care about right now is they see, well, we're going to have to win a Super Bowl. We'll deal with that mess later. Let's put this first. Everything was about the Super Bowl with this Bengals team. They were healthy. Everything was good. Obviously, the Jamar Chase thing, that ended up being a bigger deal than we thought initially. But I don't know, man. I think that it is pretty disappointing because of you've had worse seasons, a 2-win Bengals team that led to a Joe Burrow, a 4-win team. That's how you got Jamar Chase. But you didn't expect to be good those years. You expected to be Super Bowl champions or at least contending this year. And now may not even make the playoffs. I think this has to be one of the most disappointing seasons in Bengals history.
No question about it. You're getting statistically the best season you could dream of from your 2-3 best players. I mean, Trey Hendrickson leads the league in sacks, and it seems like that gets brushed to the side because Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the league and Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the league, at least numbers-wise. So it's very frustrating because if you build a team, you ask for those 3 players. You ask for a dominant edge rusher, a dominant quarterback, and a dominant wide receiver 1, and you go from there. And the Bengals have the best, at least in the 2024 season, at all 3 of those positions. And you're sitting at 4-7, trying to claw your way on the playoff machine out of a major hole that, in reality, we all know we can't get out of. So yeah, it's brutal. There's really no other way to slice it. I do think we've done a pretty good job of getting to week 11 before we really got this down about it. I mean, this season's been over for a while, and we've mapped it out in our brains and stayed alive, at least emotionally, for a while. So that's good for us. Kudos to us.
I look at other teams and I see that, who's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and you can have these debates. Good franchises with healthy, good quarterbacks don't miss the playoffs. Does not happen. The Ravens, I pulled it up here. The Ravens have missed the playoffs once in 7 years, assuming they make it this year. The one time they didn't, Lamar Jackson was hurt. Lamar Jackson, when he played that year, 7-5. You have the Kansas City Chiefs haven't missed a postseason in 10 seasons. The Bills haven't missed one in, how many is that? They've made 6 straight.
Hell, when they drafted Josh Allen, Tyrod Taylor, they drafted Josh Allen in the draft coming off of a playoff season that Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback. Has Josh Allen, 6 years. So, they've won every year that Josh Allen's been there.
And that's who I compare Joe Burrow and the Bengals to. Those are the teams I put them with.
Yeah, not divisions, like the contenders,
The only other quarterback that's experienced this is Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's the only one. This is a failure on all accounts. I don't know what the direction of the organization will be going forward because there's so much you have to fix. I mean, there's just so much.
Well, have you thought about trading Jamar Chase? I don't know if it's ever been mentioned before.
No, but you're going to
We're
lose.
not going there. I'm just joking.
You're going to lose T. Higgins, and T. Higgins has he been the best graded wide receiver this year? I know it's smaller sample size.
He was a 91.
So it's
in the last game.
He's been incredible when he's on the field. You're not going to pay him. You're not going to pay a guy that's unhealthy unless that number goes down under $20 million.
At what point do you? At what point do you watch the game
Because
it's the Joe Burrow conversation? What was the Joe Burrow conversation? Because there were injury concerns when we paid him, and it was, who cares if he gets hurt? Because if he's not out there, this team stinks.
No.
Do we stink without T. Higgins? When do you just pay him?
That's the
He's
thing.
incredible when he's on the field.
That's where Kinner's right. That's where I tend to agree with Kinner. Not for Jamar Chase, but that second-tier wide receiver. You should be able to be good with Jamar Chase.
I don't think Zach Taylor.
You should be able to make it work with Jamar Chase and another wide receiver that's not T. Higgins, and then another wide receiver that's not T. Higgins.
Well, right, but I'm saying if we are talking about the cap the Bengals are going to have this offseason, I think if T. Higgins walks, you're using a premium pick on a wide receiver.
Yeah.
In which case, would you rather spend $18 to $23 million
on the sure
on
thing
T and use the pick on defense or a guard or whatever else? Then you have a luxury pick to take, something else you don't want other than a wide receiver, something else you don't necessarily need. I think it's certainly a question that's going to have to be asked if he keeps doing what he's doing, and if he's able to play 5 out of the 6 games that are left in the season. His evaluation keeps going down.
I mean, on top of that, too, we're also forgetting the tag and trade.
Right.
We're going to possibly get another pick with that, too.
Right.
So if we do decide to move on from him, they'll be able to spend a pick relatively high at receiver. It doesn't have to be 1, but considering if you just look at the draft boards and whatnot, it's probably beneficial for them to pick pretty high at receiver this year if they want to get one. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of I don't know how to feel about the T. Higgins thing just yet. I kind of like the idea of paying him if it makes sense because I do think that his value has come down a bit. Maybe if he continues to have these 150-yard games the rest of the season, he'll end up getting 1,000 yards on the year and just completely blow us all away and get that $30 million he's looking for in free agency. But at this moment, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to sign T, keep Jamar, and look at the draft for other holes to fill on this team. But, yeah, I mean, we'll get there when we get there. I think it's a little early to have that conversation.
So yesterday when I brought that up, I said, the best chance, is to fill as many holes with the draft as you can. You're saying that solution you feel confident in just because you address other holes with the draft, but you said you weren't confident in the draft, in their drafting ability.
I'm saying I'm not confident in their ability to draft all-pro talent consistently.
To come in and play, like, because that's the thing when they drafted, why am I drawing a blank? The wide receiver from Georgia,
AJ.
No, sorry, not
Burton?
Burton. Sorry, Burton. I said Georgia. My
Well,
bad.
he was
You were
Georgia.
Right.
You're
You were
right. You're
You were
right,
I said
technically.
Georgia. Like Burton, when because Tyler Boyd leaves, Bengals draft Burton. I'm thinking that's a guy with the first round grade that only fell because of the off the field issues. I'm like, oh, he's going to come and play right away. He's going to be that replacement for Tyler Boyd. Boom, they just keep on moving. Obviously, he comes in and he's a project, and it's like the Bengals weren't in a position that's why I did not like their draft. I remember you and I think at the time, I wasn't even doing this show yet, but I was doing my show in here that day, I think with you and Elliot. And I said, my concern with the draft was every pick is a project. Everything is, Mims, we know how good he can be, but, is a project because he hasn't had a lot of starts. And you go to Burton, and then you go to the injury with All. Like, it's like a project. You're taking a risk. It's a big gamble. This team can't take gambles anymore. They have to go get players that they feel the most confident in that can come in and play right away. And is that a shift in thinking or what? Like, I don't know what you do to change that philosophy if you're the Bengals.
I think there's multiple shifts in thinking necessary to change how the draft has shaken out for the Bengals over the last few years. I mean, they not only focus on, upside and BPA according to boards and all that stuff. They also draft guys that are leaders and captains on their college teams and did community service in high school and stuff like that. I'm done caring about that stuff. Drafting these captains and these quote-unquote good guys in college hasn't worked out. The teams that draft the players that are falling down the board, that have produced in college, that have some concerns.
The Eagles are an example. Who was
exactly where I was going. Jordan Davis. Yeah. He falls out of the top 5. He's a no doubt 1 or 2 pick. Falls out of the top 5. The Eagles jump on him. He's one of the best interior D linemen in all of football. Quinyon Mitchell falls down the draft board. The Eagles don't need a corner. They have Darius Slay. They jump on him. They draft him. And then they turn around, they jump on Cooper DeJean because he falls down the draft board. And he's a great player. Stop drafting what you think you need and draft great players. It's not that hard of a concept. And you'd think the Bengals would lean into that with the lack of scouting. You'd think it'd be easier to just draft the players that are good without a scouting department because you don't know. I think the Bengals try to outsmart themselves, or they think they're smarter than they are, or I don't know what it is, but with the smallest scouting department in the league, you should be the most, I'm going to say dumb. You should be the most dumb drafters in the world. Pull up Mel Kiper's big board and pick the top name on it. Stop trying to be cute and be creative. When players fall that are good, draft them. Don't think you can fix guys that are falling because they have character concerns. Draft the guy that's falling because he played at Toledo and not Alabama. Draft the guy who has great tape.
Yeah.
Start doing that. That's the philosophy that's going to pick the Bengals, because what has that gotten them now? That got them Matt Lee in the 7th round. No one's drafting Matt Lee. He's an undrafted free agent. You drafted him in the 7th round because he has great tape at center at Miami. And now we have a guy who's been a great extra offensive lineman in jumbo sets this year, and a no doubt Ted Karras replacement at center that a lot of guys want to be starting right now. That's how you do that, is you draft great tape. And the Bengals don't do that over the last few years. That's the biggest change I think they need to make.
I think the other thing, too, that we forget to mention is that the only reason why we consider a lot of those guys developmental or projects is because they don't see the field. Myles Murphy has not seen the field this season.
Right.
And Dax Hill never saw the season his rookie year. Like, we continue to just
That's fair.
let these guys sit the year they get drafted. I'm done with that. You have to let them play and make those mistakes early on, get adjusted to the NFL lifestyle, because year 2, year 3, that's their process now. Myles Murphy and Marius Mims, he's currently going through those rookie struggles, but he's getting better and better as the season progresses. So it's just like, at some point we have to have a different philosophy. You got to start playing guys. You start rotating those guys in. There's no reason for Sam Hubbard, who's had a injury that has been hidden from us since the summer, that should have been sidelining him, to be getting 75% of the snaps, even 50%. Right. He should be getting 25% of the snaps, if that. He should be
the third edge rusher on that side.
Exactly. He should be a guy that's only coming in on running down situations, third and short. That's it. He should not be in on anything else, and yet they continue to just stick with their guys, and that's really a tell of the coaching staff, because they don't feel comfortable with the guys because they're not able to develop them, and they're too afraid to let them go out there and waste their season. Well, I'm sorry, you're you're at the point now where you have to start playing your rookies. They have to start developing now.
And what did we see last night or on Sunday night when they pulled Cam Taylor-Britt and put in the rookies?
It's like,
We saw the best corner play we've seen all season out of Josh Newton and DJ Turner. The Bengals refuse to play their young guys. We've been banging the table for Jordan Battle on the back end all year. Geno Stone's 85 out of 87 PFF safety grade. It can't be worse. It literally cannot be worse. So give him some run.
Yeah.
What's the aversion to it? I don't get it. You draft these guys for a reason, then you never play them.
Forcing bad veterans, they're not bad veterans, but limited veterans, if you will, out there as opposed just because, hey, we're not going to play young players. This isn't Major League Baseball. You don't have to come up through the system, get them out there, let them learn while they're out there. They've been playing against high elite talent, especially if you're taking guys from the Power 5 programs, especially the Georgias, the LSUs, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, and others. They've played against elite talent. They could figure it out when they get out there. But we'll get into more. Last question on that: who makes the final draft decisions for the Bengals? Is it Katie? Is it Zach? Is it who? Is it Tobin? Who's making those final decisions in that draft?
I think it's probably Duke, but he can be overruled, right? Would be my guess.
I think that there's a final say from our good friend Mike Brown.
Yeah.
On the big decisions, but I do think he's definitely deferred to Duke and Zach on those decisions. I think when I look at
Zach plays a huge role in the draft. Coaches play a massive role in the draft.
When Zach got up and was excited and pounded his fists on the table for Jermaine Burton, I think that was hey, we need to go get this guy from Zach's perspective. Overall, I think Duke is the decision maker, but I don't think he necessarily has. I think he has the final say on pretty much every draft pick.
Mike's certainly vetoing. I mean, Joe Burrow wasn't anyone's choice, but Mike Brown at 1. Jamar Chase probably was Mike Brown at 5. Not saying Duke would have disagreed or anything, but the Sewell Chase debate that fans were having for months before the draft. Mike Brown made that choice. That wasn't a Duke Tobin choice. If Duke Tobin wanted Penei Sewell and Mike Brown wanted Jamar Chase is a Bengal. So I think it's probably the coaches and Tobin, and then
they probably all agree on a lot of decisions too. But
I do think when it gets out of the top 50 picks, 40 picks, Mike Brown is probably taking a nap. So that's just all Duke and the coaches wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Jay Morrison joins us here in about 15 minutes. We'll talk more Bengals coming up here in just a few moments. More Off the Bench next.
Welcome on in to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Take that.
Justin Kinner here. Real quick, so to start this segment, I was just going to, we have stopped doing ad reads, but I do have one ad read because this Thursday, we are back at Champions Grill. So Champions Grill this Thursday for Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Live. Jacob Tissett will be there.
I'll be back.
Casey McAllister will be there.
That's right.
Elliot Rearing will be there. Potentially Reed. I don't know. Champions Grill.
On
Work Road.
both E's.
Both E's.
That's right.
Jay Morrison joins us coming up here around the corner. Let me ask you, think of this the other night when with the Chargers situation. You said earlier, the only other teams that have struggled with to win games consistently with an elite quarterback has been the Chargers. And when Harbaugh was announced as going to be the head coach of the Chargers, some analysts were concerned that you have Justin Herbert. Maybe you force Ben Johnson to go. I mean, imagine pairing a Ben Johnson with a Justin Herbert, going to get an offensive mind. And that's what a lot of people keep doing with this Bengals team right away is imagine going to get, a Ben Johnson with the Joe Burrow. But look at the success right off the bat that the Chargers are having going with a football mind. I think sometimes we get too caught up with the offensive mind. I think whoever takes over as head coach has the responsibility of either being the offensive mind that has the vision, or you bring someone else that has the vision to run the offense to help get you where you need to go. Vrabel's a name that constantly gets brought up, but all I hear is Bengals fans constantly pushing the Ben Johnson narrative. When you look at what the Chargers are doing right now and I think Harbaugh, I know he's known for his defense, but I think he's just a football mind. I'd put Vrabel in that same conversation. Has Vrabel had the success that Harbaugh has had? Absolutely not. But Again, Zach Taylor's going nowhere, as you've talked about. But like this idea that because you have Joe Burrow, it has to be a Ben Johnson. That's all I see people say in the chat and on socials. I feel like you need a football-minded guy. Vrabel, to me, I think is going to be a big hire for whatever team decides to pull the trigger on him. There's rumblings in Cleveland right now that he was on the sideline last week. He had the headset on. You know, the defensive coordinator for Cleveland's not in trouble, but they don't feel like the headset being on for Vrabel is being done, of course, for the defense. It's being done for potentially him being the next head coach in Cleveland, but a lot of Bengals fans are throwing his name out there as well. How do you feel about the philosophy of the next head coach in Cincinnati, although it's probably not coming anytime soon? Does it have to be Ben Johnson? Does it have to be an offensive mind when it comes to leading this team, especially with what you're seeing the Chargers do right now with the defensive mind coming in and totally changing the landscape of the Chargers, who look like a balanced, competitive, real football team with the vision for the first time since Justin Herbert's been drafted?
I've said time and time again, if the Bengals are going to fire Zach Taylor, I don't think the solution is going out to get a play caller. Because if you're going to go hire a play caller, how about you hire a play caller for one of the highest scoring offenses in the entire league, and we have him right here. So I think if you're going to go make a change, I would like to go make a change for Mike Vrabel or one of those guys, or D'Amico Ryans. That's another hire that doesn't get talked about a lot in this kind of conversation.
That's probably a better one.
When they brought in C.J. Stroud, everyone was looking around the league and saying, hey, you got to go get an offensive coordinator to come in with this young, superstar quarterback. That's what everyone's doing. Well, they went and got D'Amico Ryans, who was the best coach on the market, the DC in San Francisco, and they went out and hired an even younger buck, Bobby Slowick, to come call the plays in the offense, and that has worked phenomenally in Houston. That's what I would like to do in Cincinnati. Maybe we have that guy here already in Dan Pitcher. Dan Pitcher's a guy that Joe Burrow has loved for a long time as his quarterback's coach ever since he came into the league, a guy that everyone was really excited about getting brought up to the offensive coordinating role in Cincinnati before this season, someone that we expected to be hired elsewhere if he wasn't elevated. I would like him to get some look at calling the plays if we hire someone else. That's why I wouldn't necessarily be in the team Ben Johnson or any of those young offensive minds camp, because I think that's what we did with Zach Taylor, and we're already complaining about it this far in, and I think going a different route would be the way I do that. I would like to go back to the main point of all this, that Zach Taylor's not going anywhere, so talking about a new coach next season is a futile conversation.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I guess I'll settle with it, but it's just like, ugh. I'm agree with Jacob, though. I think if a defensive coach came in here, I think it would be great. I think that's what you need. The Kansas City Chiefs, great defense. Now, granted, they have a great offensive mind at head coach, but they have a great defense. I want to work on the defense. If the Bengals' defense can be just okay, then I trust Joe Burrow to at least enhance the roster to make the playoffs. Clearly, that's not going to happen this year because the defense is just so bad that you can't overcome it. But if you have a defensive-minded coach that fixes our defense, and then you have Joe Burrow leading the offense, I trust it. I trust that method. And even if you don't trust that method, this method currently is not working. Right. So why would you not change it?
I think an interesting conversation with the coaching staff is who's going to replace Lou, because I think that's the most likely firing, and I think that's a major change that could really help this team. If you get a great defensive coordinator in here, that could really, really help this team just as much as firing Zach. I mean, changing something in this coaching staff, it doesn't just have to be the head guy. If Zach really is as focused on the offense as we all think he is and not doing anything to the defense, which is a major problem that we all have said time and time again, getting someone in here that can really lead the defense, not that Lou isn't. I don't even think Lou's the major problem, but I think right now we can all agree that it's probably most likely that he's the one that gets fired as the scapegoat at the end of this season or during this season. I hope that we go get someone who's really up and coming in the defensive side of the ball to be the defensive coordinator here. Mark Fetters asks, is Mike Zimmer available? Mike Zimmer is currently calling plays for the worst defense in football down in Dallas. The guy that I would have circled to replace Lou, obviously not a head coaching candidate if Zach were to be fired, but if Lou is on the way out, I would love to go get old Bengals friend Al Golden, current defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, absolutely killing it.
I thought you were going to say Hugh Jackson.
Well, he's not a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, but he could be.
Maybe he couldn't be worse than offense.
Yeah.
I guess he was actually a pretty good offensive coordinator. He was just a bad head coach.
Did you like Hugh Jackson?
That's one of those at that time. That I always say this too. I'm going to credit the Browns for the intent of the pick. Keep in mind, at that time, Hugh Jackson was actually the biggest name of coordinators getting set to become a head coach. Clearly, it did not work in Cleveland. Clearly, he was the head coach of a team that went 0-16.
I think it did great.
It did not do good, obviously, but I will not say it was a bad hire because at that time, it was, by the way, Bengals fans were devastated when that happened.
I was crushed.
Are you being a smart ass?
No, I love
okay.
Hugh Jackson, the offensive
Oh,
coordinator.
okay. I was like, but no, I'm saying that because at that time, like everyone said, all the analysts, everybody, the Browns got a home run hire at head coach. He was the biggest name. I mean, like Ben Johnson right now.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to go get Ben Johnson. That was Hugh Jackson at that time, and the Browns went and got the Ben Johnson of that time, and everyone's like, Cleveland got a joke of a head coach. Well, it became a joke, yes, but I'm not going to sit there and say they made the wrong choice at that time. That was actually the best choice at that time. Like, I would say this now. What if Francona just goes with this Reds team and is just absolute garbage for the next 3 years? Are people going to say the Reds made the worst hire in the world by going to get Francona?
People
No.
will say that.
And that's my point,
Yeah.
though, is it's silly. Because
Right.
right now, based on the resume to this point, with what we know now, this was the absolute home run hire, to use a baseball point. That was the best hire you could possibly do if you were the Cincinnati Reds. So to give that analogy or that example there, I don't regret the signing of it. I just hate that it didn't work out. But, it is what it is.
That's fair. That's
So,
fine.
I thought I was going to get pushback. I was all ready.
No,
Guys,
I
see
think
that.
because that's how I view this working in Cincinnati. If we go get one of those guys, nothing's going to change from this year. We're just going to still be hoping to outscore teams. You need to change the whole philosophy of this organization, and that's why I really try to focus on the draft talk when talking about how we change for next season, change the front office talk, because I think talking about firing Zach Taylor, though I do think it would help, isn't going to happen. So I'm trying to find other ways to help fix this team, because all I want is a better Bengals team.
Fair enough. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Casey, how we looking? We got everything lined up?
Yep.
All right, we're good to go. So we'll step away for a few moments. We're not done talking Cincinnati Bengals.
Not at all.
Because Jay Morrison with BengalsTalk.com at Sports Illustrated, he's going to hang out with us, and we'll talk more Cincinnati Bengals when we come back. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett. Happy Tuesday, everybody. All right, let's continue on talking Cincinnati Bengals football. Friend of the show, of course, we got Mr. Jay Morrison, BengalsTalk.com, giving us some time. Jay, it's been a while, and a lot's changed since the last time you have come on, including the vibe, the feel, the excitement, everything. But I tell you, we're happy to have you on the show today. That's for sure.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, the hope is changed. There's a lot that has. I can't remember, when was the last time I was on. What was their record when?
I think it was camp.
I think it was before the season.
I think it was camp.
When we were all still happy.
Many
Yeah.
moons ago. But did you
Bright
ever
future.
envision? Yeah, did you ever envision at this point, heading into the bye, when you were looking at the season as a whole, did you have the bye week circled and think, oh man, we could potentially be talking about a team that's basically out of the playoff picture at this point?
The record this year, but to be 4-7, that'd be counting on a 6-game win streak to end the season. I never thought it would look like. I thought they'd lose to the Patriots. You didn't think the Commanders game was going to be a loss. Had questions about the defense, absolutely, but never thought it would be this bad. I mean, this was supposed to be the growing pains kind of going away with the young core on defense, and they were going to get better as the season goes on, and it's not happening at all. The ones that are getting better, DJ Turner, Dax Hill, are now on IR and out for the year, and everybody else seems to be regressing. It's just, I don't think anybody envisioned them being where they are right now.
Would you say, Jay, that this is the most disappointing season as a I'm a Bengals fan. I've been a lifelong Bengals fan. This is the most disappointing season for me. How would you rank this season in terms of disappointment?
It's up there. It might be number one. I go back to 2016 because they were coming off 5 straight playoff appearances. I think they started 4-1 that year.
Yeah.
And then they had a last-second loss to Pittsburgh, and it just all fell apart. And it was really kind of the beginning of the end for Marvin, even though he lasted 2 more seasons after that. But that was a really disappointing season. I think if you go back to 2006, they were coming off of that 2005 division title. Carson Palmer makes the incredible recovery to get back in time for the start of the season, and that season just went south in a hurry. And they were kind of fighting to get into the playoffs at the end. And I think, was it that the year where they had the missed extra point in Denver in the snow, and then they had the walk-off loss to the Steelers in the finale, and that one was pretty disappointing too. But they were in it. They were in it till the end. I don't know if you're going to be able to say that about this team.
I think that this. I had so much expectation, so much hope coming in, and it's all fallen flat. Saying that, usually after a Bengals season, I have hope for the next season. Is that the case now? How far away are the Cincinnati Bengals looking into next year? Can I say that this year was just a wash and we're on to next year, or is the problems going to are the problems going to continue into next season as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to wonder where this team goes defensively. At least I think the offense is going to be fine now. Yeah. We've seen what it looks like without T. Higgins, and you assume they're not going to have T. Higgins next year. So Jermaine Burton's not the answer. So I don't know where they go to get a number 2 receiver to get anywhere close to kind of production that T's having. But they've found ways to still they still play well offensively when T's been out with the injuries. They haven't won, but they've kept things going offensively. But defense, yeah, my gosh, I mean, these young guys just have not grown into their roles, and you wonder. It gets to a point where you wonder if they ever will, and it's getting harder and harder. You're not going to be able to just go out and buy new pieces in free agency when you're going to have to pay Jamar, and you're already paying Burrow, and Hendrickson. Is Trey going to demand a trade again? Is he going to want a new extension or threaten to hold out? There's just so many questions, so many things that can continue to go south. Is Lou Anarumo even going to be back next year as a defensive coordinator? There's a lot of question marks on that side of the ball going into 2025. And I think these last 6 games will answer some of that. With DJ Turner and Dax Hill out, then you're going to see Cam Taylor. He got benched, and now he's going to be back in there. Yeah. Josh Newton, the rookie, he played pretty well. How does he look in these last 6 games? We were just talking about this on the podcast, that in the 90s, they were the send them home happy Bengals. They always found a way, once they were out of it, to kind of make a run and give you some hope for next year. And then that was, there weren't any changes. And I wonder, I mean, it feels like right now, if the season ended now, Lou probably wouldn't be back. But they don't have any good offenses that they're playing in these final 6 weeks. Yeah. And if this defense does start to gel a little bit and show some progress and starts playing well and even gets on a little bit of a run in these final 6 weeks, would that be enough to run it back and bring Lou back? I don't know how that's going to play out.
Speaking of Lou, and I probably know how you're going to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The Bills have made the playoffs for 6 straight years. The Kansas City Chiefs have made, that's counting obviously this year, they're going to make it. Kansas City Chiefs have made it 10 straight years. The Ravens 6 of 7. The one time they missed it, obviously being Lamar being hurt in 2021. When Lamar was healthy that season, 7 and 5. Every good quarterback, and I like to think Joe Burrow is a pretty damn good quarterback. Every top 5 quarterback outside of maybe Justin Herbert, you can start throwing Justin Herbert in there, has had the ability to make the playoffs consistently. You're now looking at back-to-back seasons. I know last season's a little bit skewed. Joe Burrow was hurt. He was 5 and 5 when he was healthy-ish last year. I don't know how much of the season he was actually healthy. But at some point, the coaching staff has to be looked at here. And I know Lou is probably a symptom right now. His name's going to be bigger than Zach Taylor. But the Chargers had to let go of their head coach when it clearly wasn't working with a top 5, top 6, top 7 quarterback in Justin Herbert. When does the panic button get hit? When do the Bengals look to move on from Zach Taylor? And I know you might not have that answer, but it's just I have to ask it.
Well, I mean, you look at the track record, and Mike Brown is as patient as they come. Yeah. And he's typically not going to pay somebody not to coach. I think where this maybe happens is if they do move on from Lou next year, whose call is it? Because I'm pretty sure he's under contract. So Mike might want to push back on that. And if Zach argues for it, then they bring in a new defensive coordinator, that doesn't work well, then I think that's where the real question. I have no doubt Zach will be back next year, no matter what happens the rest of this season. But yeah, the patience he showed Marvin Lewis with no playoff wins and some really horrific seasons, that 2010 I think of, and Zach's 5-2. He's taken him to a Super Bowl. What's Mike? He's 89. He knows you blow something up and start over, you may never get close again. He wants to win a Super Bowl, and he might see that as staying the course, as being the best course of action. Maybe other people don't agree with that, but their opinions don't matter. The only one that matters is Mike Brown. So I think that we'll see how long this lasts, but I don't see the panic button getting pushed anytime soon. Joe Burrow is going to keep this team relevant. They're not going to be just a total train wreck. They've made the playoff every year that he's finished the season. So does he finish this season? Do they make the playoffs? Doesn't look likely for them making the playoffs. Not mathematically out of it yet. The AFC, that bottom tier, the seeds 7 through 9, it's a jumbled mess, and they do have an easy schedule coming up. You could see a run possibly happening. They've been terrific coming out of the byes in the past, so I don't count them out yet, but it's obviously a very, very steep hill to climb to even consider getting back into contention.
Jay, you mentioned right there that Mike Brown wants to win a Super Bowl before he passes, and certainly Joe Burrow gives him the best chance to do that. Joe famously said the Super Bowl window is open his whole career. At this point, it feels like that initial Super Bowl window when we went in 2021 has closed, and the Bengals are going to have to open another one with a sort of rebuild on the fly. Do you expect the front office to be willing to adapt their ways to function with the burden of a major quarterback contract, to make the necessary additions and changes to get this team back to a competitive place? Because there's so many changes that have to be made to this roster, at least it feels like right now, sitting at 4-7, and with a $55 million quarterback contract, it's going to take some bending over backwards by Mike Brown in that front office to get that done.
Yeah, people aren't going to like the answer, but no, I don't see them ever changing their ways, and that's what you get with a family-run business. Even when Mike moves on, it's his daughter running the team, and her husband, and the granddaughters, and it's a philosophy, and it's ingrained in that entire building, that entire front office, and I don't see it ever changing. They famously say that they're not gonna forfeit one season for another. They view every season as valuable, and they're never gonna be like the Rams saying F them picks and going all in and going for it. They're just that's not the way they've operated, and they're just going to keep doing it the way they're doing it and hoping to catch lightning in a bottle like they did in 2021. And yeah, the bottle's got a bigger mouth on it when Joe Burrow's your quarterback, and I think they think it can still happen, but I don't see them making the kind of financial moves that puts the following season, the following 2 seasons in jeopardy.
There's really seems to be no unified message at this point out of the locker room after these gut-wrenching losses. We see different quotes from coaches and the different players. Culture has been such a big thing for Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. I know it's not an easy yes or no question. You're certainly not on the team or anything like that, but it feels like Zach is starting to lose his grip on the locker room a little bit. Have you been getting that impression at all?
I don't know if he's losing his grip. We've heard Jamar kind of call Zach out before, and I think it was week 2, week 3 of his rookie year after they lost in Chicago. He said that, and I don't think he's lost the locker room, but it happens in this league. That's why teams cycle through coaches as fast as they do. Marvin was an anomaly, and it just gets stale. Even if they don't necessarily lose respect for the coach, just messages get stale, and it's kind of the in one ear, out the other thing, and yeah, we've heard this before, all of that. So I think that's where you freshen it up is you go and you get a new defensive coordinator, and you've got a new voice in that room, you've got a new philosophy defensively, and that's how they keep things fresh. It sounds so repetitive in the post-game press conferences because it is. They keep losing the games the same way. They can't finish, and I don't know what they can say. And and I think we kind of get banged on a little bit too for asking the same questions. But it's like, well, you have to ask the same questions when they keep doing the same thing, and that maybe goes back to the culture where he's developed such a good culture that no one is willing to throw anybody else under the bus. At some point, somebody on this offense needs to stand up and tell the defense they've got to pull their weight, that this is the reason this team is failing right now.
Following Sunday Night Football's game, Zach said that it wasn't time for panic and wholesale changes. You said that you don't expect Zach to be fired after this season. What do you think it takes in these last few weeks for Zach to admit that, hey, it is time for a little bit of panic and some major changes, whether it's the coaching staff below him with Lou, the new defensive coordinator, or some major roster changes, cutting guys that you may have just signed this past offseason? What will it take to end this season for him to admit that there are some major changes necessary in this locker room?
Well, I think that's what he was saying, is now's not the time. I don't think he's out. I don't think he's ruling out changes at the end of the season. That would be crazy to do. But I'm with him here. What are you going to do? You're not going to cut Evan McPherson right now. Look what the Chiefs got Harrison Butker on IR, and they had to go sign a guy off the Jets practice squad. There's as bad as Evan's been recently, there's no better option out there. And you're not going to fire a coach at this point. You're not going to have a new I don't know that anybody on that defensive staff right now would be any better than Lou. It's still going to be an old voice. It's not going to be this infusion of energy and a new defense. And you're not going to go pull somebody off the street at this point. It's going to have to be somebody on the staff. So that's why I don't see it making any sense to make any major changes right now, even though the bye week is when a lot of that stuff happens for other franchises. With only 6 games left, it's just kind of, they are who they are, and they've got to figure out a way to dig out of it. And if they don't, there's some people that are not going to be back next year.
Jay Morrison with us here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Jay, we appreciate you taking time and hanging out with us. I know you got plenty more work to get into here throughout the day, but one quick question. I'm sure you get this. I don't know if you're still getting Christmas cards from Joe Mixon or not. I know you and him were really close, but I am kind of curious. I had no problem with the Bengals moving on from Mixon. I think it was the right choice, but are you getting a lot of the people coming back saying, hey, it was a mistake to move on from Joe Mixon, when you see the production that he's giving the Texans and you see the lack of run production that the Bengals are getting throughout this season? They could have really used him. Your thoughts on the mistake maybe being moving on from Joe Mixon?
Yeah, I mean, it's a topic on Twitter. Every time he has a game like he did last night, everybody's like, why did the Bengals get rid of him again? And so 2 things can be true. He was not a good fit for the offense that the Bengals want to run with Joe Burrow. He is still a great running back. And it was one of those things where they wanted to take some of the load off of him. And he's a bit of a problem in that he wants to be on the field all the time. And so if you're going to start splitting carries, he's going to be a problem in the locker room. He's not good at pass protection at all. And so with the Bengals throwing the ball as much as they do, it just wasn't a good fit. And it was just like a coach. His time in Cincinnati had run its course. I don't think anybody was saying he was washed up. He wasn't the right fit here anymore. And just like Lou, I think Lou could go get another defensive coordinator job somewhere else and be fantastic. And maybe that team goes to the playoffs, but sometimes you just need that change, the change of scenery, so to speak, for a person. But it is hard for Bengal fans. It's got to be to watch what Joe Mixon's do. And we just talked about this on the podcast too. I looked, Joe Mixon has 15 explosive runs. That was the big reason they got rid of him. Not so much the mercurial aspect of his personality and the lack of pass protection. They needed to be more explosive in the run game, and they felt that Joe got whatever was blocked. If it looked like the play should get 4 yards, it got 4 yards. He wasn't breaking tackles. He wasn't getting 12, 15, 20-yard runs. Well, this year he has 15 explosive runs. Chase Brown has 12. And Joe Mixon's played 8 games, and Chase Brown has played 11. Now, Joe's had a lot more carries than Chase Brown, but Joe Mixon's found that explosiveness that wasn't here. He wasn't a fit. Is that Joe's fault? Is that the coach's fault for not finding something to fit him? You can debate that, but I'm happy for him. I think it's great to see him kind of have this resurgence. He was hurt. He was definitely hurt by the way the Bengals cut him, then traded him for a 7th-round pick. He's definitely playing like he wants to stick it to him, and good for Joe. Anytime a guy that could go out and have that kind of season after getting let go, you got to be happy for him.
You have media availability coming up when you're about to head to the stadium here shortly. What are some of the big storylines you're looking for? What are you working on right now heading to the stadium? What's the thing you're most intrigued by as far as the players you're going to be able to talk to today?
Well, we won't get any players. We're only they've been, I believe they're gone for the bye already. So we're going to get defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher, maybe special teams coordinator Darren Simmons. That'll be a question. What the heck is going on with Evan McPherson? How do they get him out of it? Is the operation a part of this? Is the snap, the hold? They're not awful, but this is, I mean, every year Evan's having to get adjusted to a new holder, new snapper, sometimes both. How much of that plays into it? And then talking to Lou about where they go defensively now with DJ turnaround. I mean, this is going to be the second time that they've benched Cam Taylor-Britt, and they've had to go back to him because of an injury. And where do they go from here in that secondary? It's a mess right now. And when you have your top two cover corners on IR, I don't see how it gets better. And then with Zach, we'll be talking about, what is the plan after the bye and how can they get this turned around? And I know what the answer is going to be. It's, one game at a time, be more consistent, get in a rhythm, but I don't know that it can happen. I mean, 6 games left. I think the Vegas line right now is 7.5. So would you bet on them going 4-2 down the stretch? I wouldn't.
All right, Jay Morrison, BengalsTalk.com. Awesome enough to give us time. Now with BengalsTalk.com, just talk about some of the new projects you're working on, where people can find your work, of course, and obviously plug the podcast.
Yeah, BengalsTalk.com. I'm working with James Rapine under the Sports Illustrated umbrella, so all my stuff is up there. It's free to read. I still same handle on Twitter @by Jay Morrison, and then the podcast I do with Paul Dehner Jr., the Growler. We just recorded. And we record every Tuesday morning. We record Thursday mornings. We do a post game, the walkout on Sundays. So have a lot of those up. We have a Burrow centric episode we're recording later this week that's going to drop next week. And then we do a lot of live shows down at the Banks. And we're going to be doing a live show Thursday night, not Bengals related, Reds related. We're going to have Todd Frazier in. We're going to rewatch the Home Run Derby from 2015 and then talk to Todd about that experience. And then he's going to stick around and do a meet and greet with fans afterwards. So that's going to be at BetMGM at the Banks. Everybody's welcome to come down, say hello to Todd, and we'll have plenty of stuff to give away that night.
All right, Jay, you the man, sir. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Justin.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube and ESPN 1410. Wing AM in Dayton. I know we're wrapping up the radio side, but did you? What do you guys think? Did you guys get? I mean, we wanted the answer to be no. They're going to change it up.
No, that's exactly the answer.
It's exactly what you expected, right?
Yeah, that's actually exactly the answer I wanted to hear, because that's what I think, and people think that I'm, pessimistic, down on the Bengals for no reason when I keep saying all that stuff. It's glad to hear someone that's as connected with the team and knows what he's talking about, like Jay, agree with that, line of thinking that in order for the Bengals to get out of this hole, it's going to take some drastic organizational changes. And I, for one, am not optimistic that they're going to make them. The one thing that does get lost in that conversation, the conversation of a 2 or 3 year rebuild, the conversation of you have to fix so many holes on this team, we forget that the 2021 team that went to the Super Bowl had every bit of as many holes as a lot of these teams. Obviously, you need to fix some to get back to that point.
But it had one of the worst offensive lines in the history of the sport.
Worse than this one by a mile. And it's not even close. And I know you had T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon was playing at a high level. And certainly there are levels to get back to the level that team was at from where we're at right now. I understand that. But to act like that team that played in the Super Bowl was perfect is insane, and it's revisionist history. And with Joe Burrow playing quarterback and Jamar Chase playing wide receiver, you can get there with an imperfect roster. You just need a few things to break your way. The Bengals haven't had anything break their way this year.
Thing.
And honestly, at this point, keep using none of your luck in these last 6 games.
I agree.
Keep it all in your back pocket. Let's lose some more heartbreaks in these last 6 weeks. Let's miss the playoffs by winning out. Let's get maximum pain this year so we have as much luck as possible when we're back in the mix next year.
And this is where Jacob can maybe talk me in to being in on next season, because it's having everything not go your way this year. And I mean everything. Not one single thing has fallen the Bengals' way. Past several years, it has. That's the difference. And next year, I don't know what the roster will look like. I imagine major changes defensively in terms of personnel. But I think you're still going to have the same offense. I still think T. Higgins will be here. I think it'll probably be a franchise tag based on what's happened to Jermaine Burton, unfortunately, this year, and him being terrible, respectfully. I think that there's a possibility and they're going to have a third-place schedule. Say whatever you want about the Bengals having an easy schedule this year and not capitalizing. I'd argue if you beat the Patriots, and that's what it all comes down to, by the way. If they just start out hot one time, this stuff's a non-story. You're still talking about it, but at the end of the day, you know the team's at least a good team. Is this a good team disguised by just terrible losses, or is it a bad team disguised by just close, brutal, agonizing, you're almost there kind of loss? Like, what is this? What's the identity of the team? I tend to fall under the fact that it's a good team that's just nothing's gone the Bengals' way, not one single thing. That's where I land on. But it wouldn't, like, if you told me that this team was just a bad roster that just loses close games. If you lose every game by 15 points, this season's very easy to all of us. But that's not what's been happening. Every single game you're in it, every single game you're winning it, every single game you have the ability to win it down the stretch, and every single time you choke it. Every game has been a choke. So I don't know what the identity of the team is. I tend to fall that they're going to be okay for next year. I don't know if they'll be a Super Bowl contender like I thought they would be this year. But I think they're going to be a playoff team. I don't think you can ever rule that out. And with this 7-team format in the NFL, it's easier than ever. I tend to be more in on the Bengals than I'm out. But saying that, this year has been a train wreck, and it's been killing me.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. Shout out to Jay Morrison, BengalsTalk.com. Awesome enough to give us some time here today on the show. Well, until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
I did want to ask Jay, and I'm always too afraid to do it because I don't want to get Jay in trouble. But I was gonna go back to the questions at the beginning of the year if they're allowed to video players walking across the street yet. I wanted to get an update on that. I'm just too afraid. If I knew Jay, like if I knew Jay well enough, I'd ask that question. But I don't want to get him in trouble. So I don't know if they're allowed to talk about that still. But it's still one of the funniest things that's happened this season.
Like, I think his clip, all his stuff was used on the Pat McAfee show whenever they were talking about
really?
that. Man, that seemed like ages ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we had Jay on recently. I'm like, no, it was actually, I think, week 1 of camp.
I think it was camp.
I think it was
That's
week 1 of
crazy.
camp. But I feel like we just had him on recently. But, no, I appreciate him. So you asked, like, is this a bad team? And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know. Are they? I guess you're as bad as you are defensively. You're as bad as you are special teams-wise. Your offensive line's not as good as what we anticipated. Now, injuries play a role in a lot of the deficiencies with this team outside of the kicker, of course, with McPherson. I mean, but what is the – I mean, good team, bad team. You are what your record says you are. But the record says they're not one of the worst teams in football. So who are the Cincinnati Bengals? Are they a good team? What are they, Jake? I guess from that question that Elliot asked.
I think they're a bad football team. I've said they're a bad football team for a while now. I think there's going to be a couple bad football teams that make the playoffs this year, and I guess just one because I think the Chargers are a good team now, and the Broncos would be that bad team that sneaks in with the Bengals uphill climb in front of them. I think they're a bad team because if you go down the list, there's 22 players on offense and defense. I think about 18 of them stink. So at that point, I mean, or at the offensive line, when Orlando Brown's healthy, maybe that can bring up the floor of this entire unit. Ted Karras, shockingly enough, is the second highest rated PFF center, both run blocking and pass blocking. He trails only Creed Humphrey in both statistics. Maybe without Orlando Brown out there, he's just being exposed with the worst guard pairing in the league next to him. So you make changes at the guards, maybe you're in a pretty good spot with Orlando Karras and Amarius Mims. And then you have Jamar Chase, and I'll always believe in the wide receiver room as long as Jamar Chase is in it. I don't care who else is in it. You have Joe Burrow, so the offense is always going to have a chance. I think Chase Brown's a great piece. Defensively is where you lose me. It's because there's two sides of the ball, and I think there's 1.5 guys that right now I strongly believe in making a significant impact day in and day out. Half of Logan Wilson and Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
And that's it. You hope Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson can continue to grow and give you some serious impact in the middle. I would love to see Myles Murphy rush off the edge much more than he is. Sam Hubbard's still out snapping him, as Casey said earlier today during the show. And it's just crazy to me. I think it should be Trey Hendrickson off one side and Joseph Ossai and Myles Murphy swapping out on the other. And you use Sam Hubbard, like he said, on run-only downs. There are pieces on this team that could be used and make them a better team right now. but we're not using them until we're forced to. We saw how much better this defense got when you benched Cam Taylor-Britt for being burnt on Sunday night. You put in the rookie, Josh Newton, and you put in DJ Turner, bang, the secondary's better. I don't know why they haven't tried this stuff before, because now sitting at 4-7 with 6 games left, you got to see what you have in the room so you know what you got to draft and sign. I think everybody should be playing more, the younger guys that are lower on the depth chart. We got to get the guys that are probably going to be cut and benched and not on this team for the future. We got to get them out of the lineup. We got to see what we have in the young guys, because that's the only way we're going to be able to know whether we are a good or a bad team going into next year.
I was just going to add, if the team isn't good, if we don't believe the team is good as of this moment, there has to be, and this is where I don't know if there's a set answer for it, but there needs to be some sort of like urgency with getting these issues fixed. Mike Brown, I don't know if he's gonna want to spend money. I don't know who he's gonna sign. I don't know anything, but you have significant problems, and you have Joe Burrow healthy. You have a healthy Joe Burrow, and then the rest of the team is out. You have a healthy Joe Burrow and a healthy Jamar Chase. Both have been phenomenal. Offensive Player of the Year and MVP if the numbers were flipped, if it was a 7-4 team. The urgency has to be there. And that's why when you asked him, like, Zach Taylor after these post games keeps saying, we're not going to hit the panic button, we're going to stay calm, we're not going to make any significant changes. There has to be. And I know that's Zach Taylor's job, so he's not going to come out and say, I'm panicking, I'm not going to go fire people, because it's his ass on the line too. But there just has to be some sort of urgency with that front office. And I think there will be. I think that's the difference. I think there will be urgency after this failed season. The biggest, I'm starting to lean towards where Jacob is a lot of the time too, where if they make the playoffs, I think that might be a bad thing. Because that means no change will be needed.
It's a bad thing. Major caveat we have to throw at the end of that, unless we catch fire and win a game, or not even win a Super Bowl, win a couple games. Like, don't get me wrong. I think I'm a guy that tries to root big picture more often than not, and I'm rooting for draft picks and stuff like that. But if the Bengals get in the playoffs, I'm rooting for the Bengals, and I'm going to be really excited if they win a game or two, and that's going to make this season really fun to look back on. I mean, obviously we talk about the expectations going into that Super Bowl run and why it's going to be one of the most fun seasons of all time for the rest of our lives, because the win total was 5.5. And you go 10-7, win the division, and go to the Super Bowl. Just an unbelievable series of events. If the Bengals are able to sneak into the playoffs this year and knock off one of those division champs, that's going to feel like one of the coolest wins of all time, because it's 7 wins in a row probably. It's going to be an unbelievable run, which would be a lot of fun, but I think it would help this team much, much more to pick higher in the draft. And I don't even just mean because of the talent. I think it would force guys out of the building.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this, because I look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens, and I think they are the Cincinnati Bengals, except they just win football games, including the 2 head-to-head. The strengths are the same. The weaknesses are the same. But one fan base and one organization feels like it's just hitting rock bottom, and the other organization feels like they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender, even though they're coming off of a loss against Pittsburgh this past weekend in the Ravens. Why are the Ravens able to navigate through the same? Because both teams,
it's a very easy.
Both defenses have given up over 3,900 yards. Both teams have quarterbacks and offenses that put up a ton of points. What's the difference?
There's one common denomination, and that's the coaching staffs, and I think that it's the front office.
I was going to say I think there's 2.
The front office and the coaching staff, for me, it's night and day, and that's where the Bengals just have to be better. I don't know if, like Jay said, the Bengals will probably, we all knew that too. Marvin Lewis had the longest leash maybe in the history of sports without ever really succeeding. And you have Zach Taylor now who did succeed. When you get to the pinnacle of the sport, it's hard to look back at that guy and say, we're going to let you go now to change things up. But it has to be done, and it's very evident. I listed all the franchises that have good quarterbacks, and how many times they've made the playoffs. The Bengals, I mean, they can't afford to miss again. What if you miss next year? Then what are they? I don't know what they are then, because that's a disaster if you were to miss 3 years in a row.
That'd get Zach out. I mean, I've been a he has through 2026 guy. because that's the contract, and I don't think Bengals fans should want to have Zach Taylor on the books not coaching the team, because that means they will not sign a top-level head coach. I think the only chance the head coach that follows Zach Taylor is a top-of-the-market head coach is if Zach Taylor's contract expires and the front office has all of the coaching funds pool to work with to hire that guy. The thing I'm focused most on this offseason, everyone keeps talking about, are you going to attack free agency? Are you going to change your draft process? I think the first thing we're going to see with this team on whether or not they're focused on fixing this roster is, are they willing to eat dead money? They have signed a lot of people that are not working. Geno Stone, Sheldon Rankins this past offseason didn't work. They both need to be cut. Sam Hubbard, hometown kid, everyone loves him, needs to be cut. There's a lot of people on this team that can really help the Bengals by not being on it next year. The Bengals have not cut people with major money on the books in many, many years. They don't do it. They don't eat dead money. They're going to have to this year in order to compete and expedite this turnaround. Yeah. If you're dribbling out these contracts trying to wait for the money to be less, you're wasting prime seasons of one of the best quarterback and wide receiver duos in the history of the league. You can't do it. You need to change your organizational philosophy. I know Jay said he doesn't think it's likely. I don't think it's likely either, but it's the best hope we got. And I think maybe if it goes worse the rest of this year, we finish 8-9, 7-10, that will be enough to push him in that direction, because Mike Brown is finally financially invested for the first time in his life.
That's why and I've never been don't win football games guy. I hate that. I hate that all sports, this went back to the summer with the whole draft take. I hate that sports incentivizes losing. Like, hey, if you lose, we'll reward you with good players out of college. I hate that. But this is a situation where if the Bengals start winning games down the stretch, then Mike Brown could just see they just needed to get rolling a little bit. We're fine. We'll fill a few holes in the draft, and we'll just take our chances next year. Hitting rock bottom might be the only way to really kind of get that front office's attention, or maybe not. I don't know, because even
it's a line though you don't want to really pave, because if you break the spirit of the clubhouse. Correct. Then you have...
That's not a risk you want to take, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Carson Palmer situation. And I'd argue the Carson Palmer situation in today's game is probably much more accepted.
Look at Burrow and Jamar Chase after that game on Sunday. You think they can... That only gets worse, and there's 6 games left, and there's 3 wins that we all feel very confident about, and a couple iffy ones. You think that mentally those guys can handle 3 more losses and have that same dejected look on their faces after those games? I thought, like, that's a dangerous. You're right. That's a lot to ask. And,
I have a hard time believing, and this is the pessimist in me, and I am a pessimist if nothing else. I think you're going to start seeing, like, the offense that we've seen in the past 11 weeks now. That's going to go away. I think you're going to start seeing guys. I don't want to say not caring or not showing up, because they do care. It's just, I think when you lose the motivation, when you lose the hope, it's hard to get out there every week and perform well. And I know they're multi-millionaires, and it's their job, but it's the reality of sports. And I think that the last 6 weeks are going to be bad. I think they're going to be really, really bad.
All right, we only have a couple more minutes remaining. Playoff rankings come out tonight. I know that's a quick just slam on the brake and quick hard right turn.
Well, here's what I'll playoff
unless
rankings.
You have closing thoughts.
I have closing thoughts on the playoff rankings, because it's something we're gonna have to spend more time on than just the end of the show, because the SEC conversation is getting very, very loud, and I feel very strongly about that. But tonight, Indiana fans, pop some popcorn, grab a nice ice cold beer, sit on the couch, watch it. You're gonna be ranked top 5. That's incredible. And it's the last time you're going to be considered for the playoff this season. It's a magical season. You're 10-0. That's beautiful. You're going to get ran out of Ohio Stadium on Sunday. It's a 12.5-point spread, and that's not even close to what it's going to be. The last time a top 10 team came into Ohio Stadium before they played Michigan with 1 loss, Ohio State was up 49-0 at halftime. It's going to be a repeat of the same thing. But tonight, you're going to be a top 5 team. You should enjoy it. Really soak it in.
God, you're the worst.
ESPN Bet has that at third. No, and I'm not like your line's wrong. I thought I saw, so I don't. ESPN Bet has them at 13.5, and ESPN Bet had them at 9.5 a week ago, and here we are. I mean, it's just.
Kenner, I have them at 29.5.
Yeah, It could be bad though. Like, this is the thing I hate about the college football, because you're not a do-gooder. I'm not saying you, but the do-gooders come out and say we need to respect winning, and it's like we do respect winning, but we also can't just erase common sense when we point at the teams with losses
That's
and
right.
act like those losses are coming against similar competition.
Can't act like everyone's on the same page.
I don't know. You know Ryan Rosillo, right?
Yeah.
He put out.
Love
okay. That. I think we all think this, and I have never been able to find a way to
Two lost SEC teams should be like 1 through 5.
Yeah, I have never been able to find a way to frame this line of thinking the way Rosillo did, but he said all 7 of their Big Ten victories are the bottom 7 teams in the Big Ten because they have no wins over any elite teams in the Big Ten, and they've been propped up because of that, because some will say you got to reward winning, and although that is true, yes, and I've complimented Indiana. I said I like their offense. They've made bad teams look like bad teams, and that's part of it. But to act as if when you look at the roster, when you look at the talent compared to Ohio State's, and this is the elitist mentality, I get that, but football is more common sense than most other sports. Basketball, those upsets exist all the time.
Yeah.
We could talk about Vandy knocking off Alabama. Kudos to them. Great. That's fantastic. And Alabama's being punished for it, by the way. That's why Alabama's, they're in the mix of the 85 SEC teams fighting for a final playoff spot, too.
Yeah, you got to claw your way into the playoffs because you lost to Vandy, and Vandy's Texas's best win, and they're ranked 3rd. So a lot of consistency by the poll.
It doesn't. I thought it would be easier with the 12-team playoff. It's actually made the committee look dumber.
But when we get the 16-team playoff, it'll all be fixed, and we'll never debate college football again. So
and then here we are in March
Good for
Madness,
that.
68 teams in the college basketball tournament, and they want to expand it by 4 more teams. I don't know what you accomplish with 4 more teams, by the way, but more power to them.
I'd be okay with it, but it's just you don't need it to happen.
I'm with you. I'm like, I'll take more games in March Madness. I'm fine with that. I just don't know what you're.
keep the tournament field the same, but give me like the first 64. Just play another tournament in Dayton for the.
I like that. I say you should have the tournament in Dayton should just be the whole field set except for one spot. The winner of the tournament in Dayton gets the one spot.
And I'm
you
not
gotta
talking
win like 10 games.
But I'm not
to get
talking
there.
about a 16 seed.
No,
that's
yeah.
like the 8 matchup.
Yeah.
like the 8 seed.
Yeah.
They all play.
Or actually, if you
all at larges play.
No, you should get the 1 seed. It should be reserved for the 1 seed. Whoever wins the tournament in Dayton, it's a risk.
A round robin for the top 4 teams in the league for the 1, 2, 3, 4 1 seed rankings.
That's how we fix it all.
By the way, I got a pretty good laugh out of this. So Jeff Saturday, he's on Get Up this morning, and he's wearing a full
NFL coach Jeff Saturday.
Yeah, so Foxworth, who I can't stand Foxworth, but that's besides the point. Dominic Foxworth said, "What are you dressed up so nice for?" And he goes, it's that time of year, because remember he came in and he stole the Colts job.
That was so
I don't know why I
funny.
got a good kick out of that. But no, you're right. Like the Indiana thing tonight, they're going to be, for one, you want that top 5 showdown on Saturday. But let me ask you, if Ohio State, if it is a neck-and-neck race on Saturday, will you admit you're wrong about Indiana? And I'm not saying you as in you're the only one with this take.
If Ohio State wins the game by less than 20, I'll admit that Indiana's a legitimate team.
So Ohio State's covering, and then there is such thing as a good loss. If Indiana doesn't get blown out.
If Indiana keeps this game within 3 scores, they get a home playoff game. Like, it's very much that simple. Like, they do not have to win. They just have to not get blown out.
Is there a line that pushes them out of the playoff?
I think there is, but I also think the blowout would require so many other things to happen that they could still get in. But I do think there is a world where they get blown out and they are left out, which would be bad. A 1-loss Indiana should be in the playoff.
Curt Cignetti got paid $8.5 million. I think he's the 3rd or 4th highest paid coach in the Big Ten. Did he get paid more than James Franklin?
That I don't know.
I love college football contracts, and any college contracts, actually, because they just don't exist. They can leave whenever they want.
It's true. I love what they did in Indiana, though. They added a clause. He gets $1 million immediately every year that he stays. So just $1 million retention clause.
To not take another job.
To not take another job. Not a raise or anything. Just a check.
Well, sorry, Indiana. If he has a good season next year, he's gone.
Well, if he win this game, he's not leaving Columbus, Elliot.
Come on.
If Indiana wins this game, he is not leaving Columbus.
Where does he go?
The Shoe to coach the Buckeyes.
He's the head coach if he wins this?
Right away for next week. Instantaneous
Which is
fire.
great news because Ryan Day can't be Michigan.
Right,
So this
it's
is like
perfect.
it's a
Give Sig a chance at his first gold pants.
I want Michigan to win so bad because Michigan's so terrible.
I
It
would
be-
legitimately
it would
not. I would not come back to work.
It would be the funniest thing
What's
ever.
that line looking like?
So I currently have it at 9.5, 10.5, 13.5, 17.5, and 21.5. I've taken it every week that they updated it this season. Ohio State is going to drum Michigan. The current line was 13.5 last week, but it has to be up now. It's not on ESPN Bet.
Haro says if Indiana wins, Jacob has to shave his head.
I already made one shave my head bet.
I saw that the other night.
Yeah, if the Bengals win out and make the playoffs, every hair above my neck is being shaved.
Really?
Yeah, beard, eyebrows, hair.
No, Tom
Reed
Segura.
talked me into that about 1 a.m. on the show.
That's nonsense.
Tom
Yeah.
Segura did that, and please don't do that.
I'm going to do it. And the playoff stream will get 0 views because I'm going to look like a naked mole rat.
It'll be creepy. I vote against it, but
Draw on the eyebrows.
Casey, what will you do if the Bengals make the playoffs?
If the Bengals make the playoffs, Elliot, I will.
I'll do some things.
I think you have to sleep. I think you have to sleep.
Spread for Michigan.
I think you have to sleep in your car that's been parked in our parking lot for a month and a half.
Sleep in it?
Yeah, you have to sleep in it one night.
I was thinking about
Probably
doing
has a better
something
roof.
kind of like that. I was just going to, like, you know how that one guy sat on the roof of a
You and
bar
roofs.
for
Yes.
until they won a game?
Yes.
I'm going to do pretty much the same thing until they, like, let's see. I'm going to do the same thing. They will make it to the playoffs. They'll have 1 week in the playoffs. I'll do the same thing until they lose. And then when they lose, I will do something else. I haven't thought that far.
Okay, I like that.
Because this was on the spot. So,
Kinner?
but yeah.
It's only Tuesday. I might bet my hair on this game.
I'm not in on
Chad
this.
keeps talking. We might. Ohio State's going to kill him. Ohio State's currently a 25-point favorite against Michigan.
25.
Yeah, minus 25.
Here's I think Ryan Day might risk the injuries to all his players. Like, it'll be fourth quarter, 4 minutes left, up by 40, and you still have Caleb Downs, and you still have Judkins, and you still have, they are going to, yeah, they over under 50 that they put up on them.
The over-under for the game right now is 44.5. I'm taking team total over that. I mean,
Ohio State
they're
score
going
50?
they're going to dismantle that Michigan team, and I hope they beat Indiana so it actually means something.
I'm only hesitant to go there because that Michigan defense is good.
It's good. It's good. They have 2 top
put heavy
10
points
to
up.
12 picks in this draft, which is crazy
Yeah.
to say for a team that bad.
Oh, well, we'll see.
I do hope Michigan loses this week because then it could be for bowl eligibility.
Okay.
If Michigan loses this week to Northwestern, Ohio State beats them, Michigan doesn't go to a bowl game, which would be awesome.
All right, well, we're done until tomorrow.
Cavs.
No one
big game
yelled.
tonight. You cheering on the Cavs?
No, I just got the sweatshirt today. I don't even know who they are.
All right.
They got Mitchell back. They won that game the other day while resting other dudes. So
Did they really?
Yeah.
Wow. I saw Kenny Atkinson's the highest winning streak to start his career with a team ever for any coach ever.
In any sport?
Kenny Atkinson of the Cavs is second head coach or manager to win his first 15 games in charge of a team. The other,
Steve Kerr.
Ted Sullivan, who won his first 20 games as the manager of the St. Louis Maroons in 1884.
Ooh, I bought their hoodie too.
Kinner, can you please guarantee a Cavs win tonight from Mouse? He's going to love you for it.
He would love it. He would
Guarantee
love
a
that.
Cavs
I
win.
want the Cavs to win though.
But guarantee
no
it.
guarantees. No guarantees.
Oh, no.
I can't do guarantees. Now, and by the way, I forgot about that. You guys, luckily, no one paid attention to it, but you posted my guarantee of the big. I thought I was just going to get destroyed for that, even though you set me up to just say it like as a bit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Well,
there's-
then they
yeah.
lost.
They did lose.
Yeah.
So the bit doesn't
It all
work
worked
when
out.
they lose.
All right, until tomorrow. This has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Oh.